Chapter 973. Reed Town. A few drops of water dripped from the air and formed a puddle on the ground. These seemingly clear water puddles, if one accidentally touched a drop, they would immediately be deeply contaminated. Whoosh! First, two slippery and slightly fleshy arms stretched out from the puddle. Then, a woman with a beautiful face and a slightly fleshy body slowly crawled out. However, she had a pair of enviable super-long fleshy legs. Because she used water as a medium to cross space, her whole body was permeated with water, and her wet curly hair drooped in front of her face. Because of the chaotic aura emitted by this woman, the nearby residents did not dare to approach. Then, one by one, humans slid out from this woman's mouth. The Dragon City team and the Holy City team, who were covered with water and mucus, were successfully brought to Reed Town by Meritus. As for the million-level mummy, it was still stored in her body and could be used at any time. Because of Han Dong's previous request, Meritus deliberately kept a distance and pretended to have a normal relationship with him. In fact, they were also normal teammates, but Meritus' concept of relationship was different from humans. Of course, she was also attracted by this town full of strange aura. She followed the aura flowing in the streets and looked at the center of the town. There were several unusually strong auras there, and one of them even made her feel dangerous. The Dragon City team was also shocked. As early as when Han Dong provoked the Node War with the current pharaoh, Gu Su realized that things had completely gone too far and there was no way to stop it. Because of the binding of the contract, their team was also directly pulled into Han Dong's camp. At first, even Gu Su was panicking. But when Han Dong also used special means to attract the real world of Prometheus, Gu Su's uneasiness in his heart disappeared. Since they were already here, they should take things as they came. Since there was no way to stop it, they should try their best to win the war, which was the most important thing. When they arrived at Reed Town, Zhou Miaoyu, who was relatively timid in the team, shuddered and quickly hugged Ordivision Jade from behind, seeking protection. She could feel the aura of the world of terror in the town. Of course, this applied to Ordivision Jade. When they saw the faceless children playing in the yard, the old man in a balloon floating in the air, and the nailman stuck to the window, fear flashed in their eyes, too, but they held on with their courage and faith and pretended that nothing was wrong. Demon Town. Due to the effect of the Heart Sutra, Gu Su was not afraid of the strange phenomenon in front of him. He even almost instinctively revealed the Wisdom King's Dharma Laksana and prepared to forcibly exorcise this place. Of course, it wasn't just the members of Dragon City. Even the Holy City team was visiting Ridley Town for the first time. After all, it was Cass and Diana from the Black Rose Knights who had participated in the resurrection of the clown incident with Han Dong. Feeling the strange aura in the town, even Demps was alerted. He quietly released many layers of invisible magic shields to cover his body. Mia, who was wearing a mask, was in a vigilant posture, one of her hands gently falling on the hilt of the sword on her back. Abel's hair stood on end, and the aura of a ferocious beast overflowed from his body. Just when everyone was nervous because of the strange aura in the town, Han Dong slowly raised his hands and clapped in the air. The loud clapping sound attracted everyone's attention. Don't be nervous. This is the world of destiny where I have shares. The residents will not attack you. I have a large villa here. Everyone, follow me first. Although half an hour of preparation is not a lot, it is enough for everyone to recover and heal their injuries. Han Dong greeted the neighbors and led his teammates to his villa. Demps, Gu Su, come with me. The rest of you stay here and rest. Okay. After Gu Su told his teammates, he followed Han Dong to the real center of the town hall. The guard in charge of the town hall bowed his head and respectfully greeted, Mr. Nicholas, the mayor is waiting for you in the hall. The thing on your back? Will it bring trouble to the town? The guard in the suit seemed to smell some kind of danger from the coffin on Han Dong's back. To some extent, It was similar to the clown who had brought disaster to the town. It's okay. I will take care of her. She is the key factor in this node war. She is very useful to me. Okay, please come in. As the hollow iron gate was pushed inwards, Gusu and Demps, who had just arrived at the town hall, were stunned at the same time. A trace of fear flashed in their eyes. This reaction was exactly the same as the participants who had come to the town hall for the first time. The surface of the town hall was covered with scribe arms, similar to Boston ivy. La la la, the feminine voice from the scribe echoed in the front yard of the town hall. Not to mention Demps and Gusu. Even the current Han Dong would feel a certain degree of fear when he heard this familiar voice. Walking in the garden path in the front yard, Demps asked in a low voice, "Nicholas, the level of this town should be lower than Shindu, right? After all, Shindu corresponds to the Tier 4 participants, and your first real fate came to this town. But why is there such a strong sense of danger? Moreover, the mayor's position seems to be occupied by an NPC. No one is fighting for it." Han Dong gave his own opinion. "I don't think we can use level to measure this place. According to Fate's settings, Ridley Town is a special realm of Fate. Only parties that have cleared the prequel storyline are qualified to enter this place. But it is different from Shendu. Most of the residents here were basically carefully selected by the mayor from various small worlds and brought here. All of them were elites and had the potential to grow. As for the mayor's position, I won't be able to sit in it anyway." "Understood. I didn't expect you to be able to get the shares of this town." "Haha, I'm in luck." With the arrival of Han Dong, the shareholder, several arms that came from the scribes reached out from the walls and pushed open the thick and heavy door inwards. For a moment, several strong auras leaked out from inside at the same time. Demps was so scared that he immediately covered himself with a layer of water element magic shield. Gusu also directly revealed the Wisdom King Dharma. Han Dong was surprised. The mayor is so considerate. Did he gather all the 10 demons in advance? The group of people gathered in the hall turned their heads and gave Han Dong a kind smile. With the sound of metal wheels, one of the 10 demons had taken the initiative to come over. Chapter 974. The cold corpse cart slowly slid out from the depths of the hall. Thanks to the blessing of Mind's Eye, Gusu could see countless ghosts stacked together, pushing the cart together. Their souls seemed to be tied to the cart and couldn't leave. Only the female corpse lying on the cart could give them the right to move. Seeing this scene, Gusu also frowned. It was the first time he saw such a terrible ghost. "Miss Jane, I haven't seen you for a month." Han Dong took the initiative to step forward, grabbed the push rod with both hands, and used the corpse cart as a medium to establish a consciousness channel with Jane. Miss Jane's concerned voice came. "This matter should be more difficult than the clown, right? Otherwise, the mayor wouldn't have dragged all of us here." "Yes, but I'm still confident that I can win." "Well, we'll help you anyway. Go in, the mayor and others are waiting for you." "Okay." Han Dong pushed Miss Jane and signaled the two behind him with his eyes to hurry up. Under Gusu's mind's eye vision, as Han Dong took on the task of pushing the cart, countless ghosts seemed to be relieved and all squeezed under the cart to rest during the rest time. Han Dong's mystery added another stroke to Gusu's heart. 10 demons. Are they the 10 strongest monsters in this town? Gusu also began to be curious about this strange town. When he went to the side door of the hall, his mind's eye could see different kinds of qi slowly flowing out from under the door. Some were similar to white fog, some were similar to ghosts. The real value of this town may be higher than Prometheus. The door opened. Inside was the clerk's office, which would also be the temporary meeting room for this node war. On a long oval desk, the 10 demons of Dry Town were sitting, reordered. However, the number 3 position was empty. Number 10 Moonlight, Michael Miles. Number 9 Undead Demon, Jason Voorhees. 8. The Crooked Neck, Charlie Ambrinino. 7. The Lonely Scarecrow, Sam and his Huskno. 6. Magic Soul, Alethea Gillespino. 5. The Female Corpse, Jane Doyle No. 4. Deranged Program, Fina Rywald. Number 3. Temporarily Vacant Void, Richard Powell No. 1. Mayor Slenderman, Slender Ghost Shadow. Although Demps and Gu Su were mentally prepared, when they opened the door and saw this scene, their hearts tightened. They even instinctively took half a step back. So this is the mayor. No wonder Nicholas said that we can't seize this node. Gu Su's mind's eye could see through many things, but he could not see through the mayor, who was sitting in the main seat. When his mind's eye looked over, there was only darkness. Nicholas, let your friends sit in the gallery. Come here. The mayor pointed to the empty third seat, which was reserved for Han Dong. In the hearts of the townspeople, the former clown was not dead. He had just changed into someone else. As for Han Dong himself, when he returned to Dry Town and set foot on the ground, the number 3 appeared on his chest. That's right, Han Dong was not only a shareholder, but also the third demon of Dry Town. Congratulations, Dean Richard. How's Sister Shirley? The order of the 10 demons had changed. Dean Richard, who was once the 5th demon, had absorbed the young star's color, and his soul and body had completely changed. He had once assisted Han Dong in fighting the clerk head-on and won by a little. Now, he had become the number 1 below the mayor. Yes, Shirley is fine. Dean Richard had already regarded Han Dong as his benefactor and confidant in the chaos. When Han Dong's request for help was sent, he was the first to agree without waiting for the mayor's notice. After greeting Dean Richard on the right, he naturally had to greet the clerk on the left. When Han Dong turned his head, the clerk was playing with his fingers with his head down, and at the same time, he was singing a song in a low voice. The volume of the song was just controlled so that only the neighboring seats could hear it, and it did not affect the size of the meeting. Just as Han Dong was about to ask a question, another mouth grew out of the clerk's cheek, and he whispered to the soft tune that he was humming, "There's no need to greet me. There's no need to inform me. Since it's an order from the mayor, I'll definitely do my best to help. No matter how many of them come, I'll kill them all. After all, I want to be praised by the mayor." Her gentle voice suddenly became heavier. "You must kill more than Richard." "Haha, okay." Han Dong looked embarrassed and returned to the conference table. Moonlight Miles, who was sitting on the opposite side, was staring at him. Or rather, since Han Dong came here, Miles's gaze had never moved away. Through the white leather mask, he seemed to be saying, "Boss, long time no see." As for the rest of the 10 demons, Han Dong was just familiar with them, and he simply smiled at them. Since it was a meeting among the 10 demons, Han Dong also released Togu, who was the original 8th demon. Since Dreary Town had arrived, Han Dong would also give Togu room to play freely. He would let him lead the nuns in the convent and do something big. Then, they cut to the topic of the meeting, Node War. The mayor spoke directly and made his attitude clear. The basic construction of Dreary Town has been completed. To upgrade, we still lack the necessary comprehensive strength and the power of the world. We can take advantage of this battle to hone the strength of the townspeople. Their potential can erupt in the war and obtain unexpected growth. However, as the mayor, I need to ensure the safety of Dreary Town. I won't intervene in this war. Although it was a pity that the mayor couldn't participate in the war, the arrival of all the members of Dreary Town had exceeded Han Dong's imagination. Moreover, if some priest group deliberately sought death and tried to steal during the war, what awaited them would be the fury of the Dean. Okay, there are about 20 minutes left. I'll share the situation of Shen-Du with you through my memory and briefly explain my plan. After saying that, a series of nerve tentacles grew from Han Dong's head and connected to the brains of the 10 demons sitting there, briefly transmitting the known information of Shen-Du to the 10 demons present in the fastest way. If such a scene was filmed and hung on the wall in the form of a picture frame, It would ensure that no thieves would enter the house for 10,000 years. At the same time, it would have a strong exorcism effect. When they received the information of Shendu, some of the 10 demons had already revealed excited expressions. After all, they longed for execution from the bottom of their hearts. When they received the detailed map and plan of Shendu, Dean Richard had already conceived a plan in his mind and took the initiative to propose. Apart from the mayor, there are exactly 9 of us. Since the 9 Pillars Company has a special meaning to the pyramid, the 9 of us will bring some special assistance. Together with the army in your hands, we will take down these 9 companies from different routes. Dean Richard's proposal was very good, and it was a conventional way of fighting. However, Han Dong had a different idea. The troops I have are only used to make up the numbers. A frontal attack will require a great deal of risk. After all, we are in someone else's territory. Moreover, we don't know how many troops there are in Shendu. If we want to increase our chances of winning, we must bring into play the characteristics of Dreary Town. What characteristics? Dean Richard was a little puzzled. That is the mayor's original intention when he built the town. He only accepted the elites of the elites and rejected all the ordinary. We must bring into play the characteristics of elite but few. Since Dreary Town happens to be in the civilian area, as law-abiding citizens, we must be able to disguise ourselves as slaves of Shendu and quickly sneak into every corner of Shendu. What I want is for there to be a citizen of Dry Town standing in every dark corner of the Immortals' capital. Chapter 975. Han Dong tried his best to limit the duration of the meeting to about 15 minutes. The 10 demons, who were assigned tasks by Han Dong, immediately rushed to their respective jurisdictions and began to arrange the infiltration plan. Moreover, the tasks assigned by Han Dong were quite rough. According to the characteristics of the 10 demons, they were arranged in suitable areas. As for how to perform, it was up to them. Among them, Han Dong was most optimistic about the little girl in Silent Hill and Dean Richard. These 2 people had a world ability. In addition to being strong, they could also attract other species and cause large-scale chaos in a short time. Of course, the corresponding demonic club on Miles' side was also very important. The demonic army with an execution ability would be an important weapon for Han Dong to tear apart the defense line of Shendu. However, after Han Dong's verification, the lethal ability that originally existed in the residents of Reed Town, similar to Miles's execution and Dean Richard's void mark, did indeed have the effect of instant death, but it was only limited to opponents who were suppressed. This kind of instant death ability not only came from the individual but also needed the blessing of the world of Reed Town. Currently, the townsfolk were in Shendu fighting in other people's world would also weaken the lethal effect. Besides, Miss Jane was not directly assigned a task. She stayed with Han Dong for the time being. After all, as a forensic doctor, Miss Jane had no direct subordinates she could contact directly. Her subordinates were only the army of wraiths tied to the cart. Such a person with strong personal strength and a good relationship with Han Dong naturally had to stay by his side. However, the only difficulty was the relationship. In order to take the position of a pharaoh, in addition to Miss Jane, Han Dong also had to bring along Miss Mary, who had always been a mobile power source. Han Dong had to minimize the misunderstanding as much as possible. The meeting ended. Han Dong stayed in the meeting room to discuss the most important matter with the mayor. Mayor, I have a request. Since you won't participate in this battle, can you help me look after this coffin? What's inside? The origin of Shendu is also a rampager like the clown. It's very important to me. She had already given up her original physical body and had come to an agreement with me. Under normal circumstances, she wouldn't cause any trouble. However, he still needed the mayor's help. After all, just like the clown, she was an existence that was marked by the Black Tower. To a certain extent, she had already lost control of herself, but I didn't know the specifics. In my opinion, the Black Tower wouldn't mark a life of destiny for no reason. Alright, I'll keep it safe for you. There's not much time left. I hope you can seize this stronghold. If I can successfully take over this place, then I'll be able to take over this place. If Ridley Town, which is trying to upgrade its world, needs the support of world power, I will do my best to help. The faceless mayor faintly smiled and nodded in affirmation. Clang! Han Dong placed the heavy black sand coffin on the conference table and quickly left with Miss Jane. There were only 5 minutes left before the start of the battle. He still had to go back and arrange the battle plan for his teammate. Making use of the relationships his teammates had built in Fairy's capital was also a key to winning the battle. However, Han Dong had just stepped out of the town hall's outer door. Boom! A loud noise came from inside the town hall. The black sand coffin placed in front of the mayor received a strong impact from the inside of the coffin, an impact from the mother white giant. A terrifying human face was reflected on the surface of the coffin lid. It seemed that the mother had directly used her own face to hit the coffin lid. It was quite strange. One had to know that this was the highest level of death magic that Han Dong had created, combined with the power of Anubis, to seal the coffin. To be able to achieve this level of impact, it was obvious that the mother was not in a weakened state at all. Han Dong's concern was correct. Since it was marked by the Black Tower, it meant that the mother's existence might cause harm to the world. However, the mayor did not have any reaction. He seemed to be waiting for the mother's next move. Boom, boom, boom. The continuous collisions caused one hideous face after another to be reflected on the surface of the coffin lid. However, the town hall seemed quiet and normal. The guards at the gate and the gardeners in the front yard were all carrying out their respective tasks. Because of the continuous impacts just now, the coffin lid was slightly tilted up, leaving a small gap between it and the coffin. Immediately after, wisps of black water slowly overflowed from inside. The quality of this black water was far higher than any species that Han Dong had seen in God's capital. Even the black water itself had surpassed the category of liquid. It was more like a kind of magnetic sand that imitated the movement of liquid. It could effectively resist the death aura of the coffin itself and slowly flow outside through the gap. The liquid overflowing on the table would sometimes construct a finger, a strange insect, and even the head of an alien. Not only the shape, but even the aura emitted was exactly the same. It seemed to symbolize that this liquid was the source of all things. When the overflowing liquid reached a sufficient amount, it immediately erupted with a murderous intent. The black water immediately turned into a white arm with extremely strong magnetism that could cause serious disorder in an individual's energy. At the same time, it could also instantly change the genetic structure of an organism. Buzz, just as it was about to touch the mayor's forehead, the arm suddenly stopped. There was clearly nothing in front of the mayor, but no matter how hard the arm tried and how it evolved, it could not get close to the mayor. The arm even broke on its own due to excessive force. But at this moment, the mayor's palm gently landed on the coffin. Crack! The coffin returned to its original position. The gap between the coffin lid and the coffin completely disappeared, and the black water was thus cut off. Ah! A scream came from inside the coffin. It was as if the original arm of the mother was forcibly cut off and the whole body was madly struggling inside. The coffin on the table shook due to the mother's struggle. The mayor was quite leisurely. He slowly took out a delicate straw and put one end of it into the black water that was out of the mother's control on the table. The other end was inserted into his throat. Suck. The black water entered his stomach. The mayor showed a bored expression as if he was not interested in this substance. He put his palm on the table. A strange door that exuded a dark aura appeared at the bottom of the coffin. As the black door opened, the coffin fell into the darkness. Han Dong was completely unaware of what happened in the town hall. He pushed Miss Jane and met up with his teammate. As soon as he entered the door, he attracted Mia's attention. It was not because Han Dong was pushing a female corpse, but because Mia could feel a similar smell on the female corpse. Yes, the ancient witchcraft that Mia learned came from Jane. Nicholas, is the origin of ancient witchcraft? Well, yes. Mia immediately regarded Miss Jane as half a teacher and was very respectful to her. The reason why Miss Jane became a corpse was because she studied ancient witchcraft and used her own organs as a medium. On the other side, Han Dong had prepared a letter for each member to save time. This is my strategic plan, especially my friends in the Dragon City team. I'm really embarrassed to involve you, and I hope you can carry it out seriously. If you succeed, I'm willing to give you more rewards. Everyone, follow me. I've informed all the townspeople to gather at the square. We must seize the initiative. The bell of war is about to ring. Chapter 976. Shendu, Ennead corporations of the 9 pillars of God, with the disappearance of several pillars of light that rose into the sky, the beings with powerful divinity had completely awakened. In the deepest part of the secret workshops of the major companies, the land of divine water, which was jointly created by the technicians of the Black Pyramid, looked like a mirror-like circular pool. The divine water that filled the pool was very similar to mercury. The highest quality black water produced by the mother body was combined with the purification technology of the white giant and further improved to obtain the divine water. Only the Black Pyramid could produce it, and the amount was extremely small. The pillar of light that rose into the sky was the brilliant reaction when the divine water was activated. At the same time, the 9 gods with divinity slowly stepped out of the pool in different postures. The various metal lines connected to their backs separated as they stepped out of the pool. After testing, all indexes were normal. They wore ancient Egyptian clothes with the theme of gold. Although they were slightly larger than ordinary people, their bodies exuded a strong divinity. Even high-grade slaves would instinctively kneel when they saw them. At the same time, the pharaoh also commissioned Osiris Heavy Industries to create corresponding divine weapons for the 9 pillars of God in advance. They each sat in the temples of the company's territory, waiting for the pharaoh's instructions. Black Pyramid top. Room of the Divine Eye. Due to the invasion of the foreign world, Shendu, the Eye of Horus, had been used as a war device. Currently, a huge eye-shaped diamond was suspended at the top of the pyramid. It could clearly observe the detailed situation in any corner of Shendu. There were also limitations. When observing multiple areas at the same time, the vision ability would be reduced. The pharaoh Ed Lewis had connected his head to the Eye of Horus and carefully observed Ridley Town, which was at the edge of the civilian area. However, Ridley Town belonged to a world. Due to its small size, the power of the world surrounding the town was extremely dense. At the same time, it was shrouded by the lightless barrier set up by the mayor himself and the silent fog created by the 6th demon. Even if the pharaoh personally controlled the Eye of Horus, he could only see a few blurry images. At most, he could spy on some black outlines on the street. He could not get any useful information at all. After looking at it a few more times, his eyes became dry. It's the first time I've seen such a detailed world. I didn't expect that the world could be compressed to the size of a small town. The world that Nicholas signed the shares should be a type of true fate that exceeded the norm, a special world that could only be reached by meeting special conditions. This kind of special world's identity test is extremely difficult, and because of the existence of the special manager, it was basically impossible to obtain the node. He did not expect that he would be able to obtain a certain amount of shares. It was impossible to estimate the military strength of the small town. The miniature world itself was as solid as a rock. It would be difficult for the army under my command to move in at the same time. Without knowing the structure of the town, rashly invading the town would definitely result in the loss of a large number of troops, and it might even leak information about the pyramid. Since that's the case, you should properly exercise your rights as a defender. Due to the strange characteristics of the town and the fact that Han Dong had the help of a space element, hybrid demon, Ed gave up all plans to attack and focused on defense. Of course, if there was any chance, the pharaoh would also let the priests, who were good at intelligence gathering, sneak into the town and try to find out more about Dry Town. A Node War, Prometheus, Aggressor, Nicholas Wallen. Victory conditions, all must be met. 1. Defeat the ruler of the node, Pharaoh Ed Lewis. 2. Defeat the troops under the pharaoh, greater than or equal to 70%. 3. Complete the exploration of the pyramid, greater than or equal to 90%. 4. Obtain the support of the people of Chengdu, greater than or equal to 50%. Restriction. The above 4 conditions must be met within the wartime, 72 hours. Otherwise it will be judged as a loss. Defender, Node Holder, Ed Lewis, current pharaoh. Victory conditions, only one must be met. 1. Defeat the aggressor, Nicholas Wallen. 2. Defeat the troops under the aggressor, greater than or equal to 70%. 3. Completely destroy the world of the aggressor, a Dry Town. Kill the townspeople greater than or equal to 80%. 4. Hold on until the wartime is over. Time is up. The information of the Node War had been transmitted to the heads of the leaders of both sides. Obviously, from the rules of the Node War, the pharaoh, as the node holder, had a great advantage. However, Han Dong was satisfied with the victory conditions. It did not exceed his expectations, and it was even a little lower. With the sound of the battle horn, none of the priest troops approached. I guessed right. The pharaoh is also more cautious. Since there is the rule of time wins, he will not take the initiative to attack the completely unknown Dry Town. Miss Clerk and Miss Demonling. Is there any problem with the arrangements I've made for you? Demonling Alexa Gillespie was very polite. She slightly lifted her little skirt and made a ceremonial gesture of greeting to Han Dong. She showed a cute smile, indicating that she could easily do it and was happy to do so. As for the clerk, she was still singing in a low voice, as if she did not hear what Han Dong was saying. Due to the special nature of the clerk, Han Dong also had to use her. Miss Funa, if you can do as I say. When the war is over, I'll put in a few good words for the mayor as a shareholder. I'll even say that you are the decisive factor in the victory of the war. The singing stopped. The clerk's head turned 3 times in a row and said excitedly, Really? You can't lie to me. Otherwise I'll kill you. Don't worry, I promise with my head. Seeing this, the clerk immediately swallowed the letter Han Dong gave her into her body and directly read the information in the letter. Then, Han Dong turned his gaze to Meritus, who deliberately kept a certain distance from him. Miss Mary, please send the 2 of them to the place marked on the map. Remember to wait for the main force to depart before using space transportation to reduce the probability of being discovered. Okay. All the tasks and action plans had been arranged. Han Dong stood at the top of the square area, painted a black smiley face, and opened his arms. As the 3rd demon, I declare the official start of the Node War. We will be absolute darkness and devour the light of God's capital. The large group of townspeople left the town through the southern street. They were not going to the inner part of God's capital, but to the outer part of God's capital. The first strategic plan was to occupy the wormhole at the edge of God's capital. Using the super-fast transportation facilities in the wormhole, the townspeople would be transported to different places in God's capital to achieve dispersion and full encirclement. The wormhole, which mainly collected garbage, made way for such a group of kind townspeople. At the same time, Meritus carried the 2 special 10 demons and used space transportation to arrive at the densely populated square area in the civilian area. White fog descended. As the demonic spirit, Elisa Gillespie, hopped around the streets, the civilian area was shrouded in white mist in a short time. Silent Hill had arrived. At the same time, the clerk randomly found a public craniometer on the street, turned herself into data, and infiltrated the craniometer server that controlled the network in God's capital. She turned into a chaotic program and attacked the server. In a short time, all the neural network facilities in the civilian area were completely paralyzed. Chapter 977. Under the structure of 3 rings and 1 heart in Shen-Du, we abbreviated the second ring as the civilian area, which covered 45% of the entire Shen-Du, and the population ratio reached a terrifying 71%. That was why Han Dong set his first strategic target on the civilian area, which would be the key to victory. Han Dong took the Wormhole Express train and got off from the south of Shen-Du. He then disguised himself as an ordinary doctor in Fairy's capital. He pushed a clean corpse cart and pretended to be in a state of shock as he left the wormhole, rushing towards the civilian district. However, the spacious road from the wormhole to the civilian area was shrouded in a faint mist. Looking around, the civilian area that could be seen with the naked eye was shrouded in mist. The efficiency of demon spirit Elisa was much higher than Han Dong had expected. Silent Hill had completely merged with the civilian area. At this moment, Miss Jane's voice was directly transmitted into Han Dong's mind through the handcart. Elisa's ability is the most special and unique among the 10 demons. In terms of pure ability, Elisa should be ranked number 2, and she's not worse than Dean Richard. The reason why she's ranked number 6 is that Elisa is very weak. Once the rules of Silent Hill are discovered, Elisa alone can be easily defeated. Of course, I made it sound simple, but it's not that easy to catch her. After all, once she's in Silent Hill, she'll summon a triangular head comparable to the ultimate ogre to follow her at all times. Han Dong was also a little curious and continued to ask, "Well, by the way, is the real characteristic of Silent Hill world overlap?" Yes. When Elisa was selected by the mayor, she used herself as a carrier to bring the illusory Silent Hill over. She kept it in her body in a way that we don't know. She could make Silent Hill overlap with the scene in the form of fog in any scene. Under the condition that the original area was basically unchanged, Silent Hill would be expanded and added based on the overlap. For example, there was an ordinary wine cellar at the bottom of a certain building. Due to the overlap of Silent Hill, the underground area might expand into an underground prison with more than 10 floors, where all kinds of Silent Hill monsters would appear. Another example is the toilet cubicle in the toilet. Due to the influence of Silent Hill, a tunnel may appear on the wall of the cubicle, leading to an unknown area full of ghosts and ghosts. What a terrifying world-class ability! That's right. Ridley Town's defensive line is also formed by the mayor's lightless barrier and Elisa's silent fog. Elisa is very powerful in terms of ability. Nicholas, where are we going now? To an organization I'm familiar with. If I want to win the war, I need the help of the locals. Since all communications are cut off by the clerks, I need to spread my name to every citizen as soon as possible. This kind of information transmission needs the help of the locals. Han Dong was very anxious. One of the conditions for winning was to get the support of the people, greater than or equal to 50%. Han Dong had asked the townspeople to try their best not to hurt the people who were not directly related to the pyramid when invading Shen-Du. Of course, Han Dong didn't expect the people of Ridley Town to have a good impression of them. As long as they didn't harm the people of Shen-Du, Han Dong would be satisfied. Staring at Ridley Town shrouded in thick white mist, Han Dong was very worried that Elisa would kill all the civilians here on a whim or because she couldn't control the monsters in Silent Hill well. Thinking of this, Han Dong quickened his pace and pushed Miss Jane into the civilian area. Because of their alliance with the 10 demons, Han Dong was not restricted in Silent Hill. He immediately spread his perception to the streets and alleys, and then breathed a sigh of relief. Due to the arrival of Silent Hill, most of the residents had returned home, and no one was attacked by the monsters. These monsters lurking in the mist would only target the priests related to the pyramid and would never attack the civilians. Miss Elisa is quite obedient. When I go to the Colosseum later, I have to find time to meet with Elisa. Although the network is down, the pyramid must have other means to find the origin of Silent Hill. Due to the complete paralysis of the civilian area's network and the arrival of Silent Hill, the total control of the civilian area was reduced to 0. It could be said that the control of the civilian area had dropped from 100% to less than 10%. Taking this opportunity, the townsfolk of Ridley Town quickly poured out from different wormholes and sneaked into different areas of the civilian area. How could the network communication in the civilian area be cut off instantly? Sitting in the Divine Eye room, Pharaoh frowned. He felt irritated because he lost control of the civilian area in an instant. A chief engineer in charge of the neural network knelt in front of him with a face full of horror, as if he was attacked by an unprecedented fear. "We've never encountered such a situation. It's terrifying. Some kind of program with consciousness invaded the main server through ordinary neural connections. The firewall we set up didn't work at all. Moreover, this series of consciousness programs completely invaded the core area in a short period of time. While controlling the server, she also created a terminal server based on her consciousness. Helu Town. As soon as the emergency occurred, we asked more than 10 senior maintenance engineers to connect to the server. However, when their consciousness entered Hele Town, they were completely lost. They couldn't cut off the connection through external switches. Many engineers were attacked by a terrifying female ghost even though they were equipped with mental defenses, and their consciousnesses died. Their physical bodies in the real world turned into mindless bloodthirsty monsters that attacked other people in the work area, causing irreparable damage to the neural network center. The neural network in the civilian area is completely paralyzed. Not only us engineers, but even the residents outside who tried to use the craniometer were forced to connect to Hele Town and felt unprecedented fear. Pharaoh took a deep breath and tried to calm his irritated heart. It seems that the neural network has a lot of drawbacks. It's good for us to be discovered by these people in advance. In the future, we'll modify and even rebuild the network security. For now, we'll completely abandon the neural network communication. The communication between the first ring and the pyramid will be changed to transmission of consciousness through the priest. The most important thing now is to clear the fog in the civilian area. The Eye of Horus has already locked onto the source of the fog and is ready to carry out the quick elimination plan. Pharaoh, do we need the 9 pillar gods to act? No. The war has just begun, there's no need to rush. There's only one target to release the fog. Let the 3 high priests who are good at surprise attacks clean it up quickly. Pharaoh used the Eye of Horus to see through the fog and locked onto a girl in a dark blue dress. Through the ability's perspective, he confirmed that she was the source of the fog. The 3 high priests with their own specialties had already moved. Chapter 978. Colosseum. When Han Dong first came to Shindu, this was the organization he relied on to establish his relationship with the lower class. In terms of scale, the Colosseum was considered a small or medium-sized organization, and it had a certain influence in the civilian area. When Silent Hill arrived, the Colosseum immediately sealed the entire organization area and sent security personnel above the level of White Slave to closely guard the various exits of the Colosseum. The neural network was completely paralyzed, and the Colosseum could not contact other organizations, let alone receive orders from the pyramid. During this period, they also tried to send some slaves who were good at reconnaissance to explore the situation in the fog. However, because the Colosseum itself had a certain connection with the pyramid, it would be recognized by the monsters in Silent Hill. Less than half of the 5 exploration teams sent out could return safely. Therefore, the Colosseum executives decided not to explore the outside world. With such a big thing happening in the civilian area, the pyramid would definitely send a powerful priest group to solve it. They only needed to ensure their own safety. However, before the fog arrived, they also received a notice from the pyramid about the Node War. Basha, the manager of the Colosseum, who once brought Han Dong up step by step from the lowest slave, was shocked by the news that Han Dong was the invader. However, despite their shock, they did not feel any hostility toward Han Dong. On the contrary, he somewhat hoped that the slave he once brought could really win the war and replace the current pharaoh. Of course, this kind of reactionary mentality could not be expressed directly. After all, the Colosseum was an organization authorized by the pyramid, and one of the executives was even a priest in the pyramid. If things went wrong, Basha would be directly erased. At this moment, there was a hurried knock on the door. A scout, who was in charge of communication during the interruption of the neural network, knocked on the door and immediately broke in. "Manager Basha." What's going on?" Basha was surprised, thinking that Nicholas had come to find him. "Manager Basha, there are 2 urgent things I need to report to you immediately. 1. A different kind of monster appeared on the street nearby. Just a glance at it made our hair stand on end. 2. A total of 3 high priests suddenly came to us through the secret passage. They want us to arrange people to lead this monster to number 1 Colosseum, and let them deal with it." "What? 3 great priestesses? Take me there quickly." Although Basha was the manager of the Colosseum, he was actually just a black slave. He was the highest-ranking slave and had yet to pass the God's Chosen One assessment. Even if he passed the assessment, he would only be at the lowest level of the priest. He was still far away from the high priest. There were no more than 20 high priests in the pyramid, and each of them could do whatever they wanted in the fairy's capital. A high priest coming to the civilian district was enough to make everyone kneel and worship him, let alone 3 of them. Very soon, the upper echelons of the beast-fighting Colosseum all gathered in the hall. Head steward Basha had just arrived at the hall through the elevator. Before he could see the high priest's appearance clearly, he was affected by a heavy aura. He immediately knelt on one knee, unable to raise his head. However, Basha still managed to use the strengthening of his neck to raise his head slightly and see the 3 high priests who had arrived at the bestial battle arena. Execution High Priest, Seth. His head was in the shape of a scimitar. His exposed skin was slightly darker, and his body was even smaller than a normal person's. Light High Priest Menes. He was a bald man who was 2.5 meters tall and had a healthy smile on his face. He was wearing gold jewelry all over his body. He floated in the air with his legs crossed, and his body emitted a warm glow. Meet High Priest, Gut. His entire body was like an infinitely multiplying meatball. He was 4 meters tall and his body was covered in black lines. His black eyes were looking down at the kneeling members of the beast-fighting Colosseum. The pressure that caused everyone to kneel came from Meet High Priest. It was Basha's first time seeing such a scene. Sweat dripped down his face. At this moment, Light High Priest's voice echoed in the hall. "Lord Pharaoh has already found the monster that caused the fog to cover the civilian district. It will soon pass by here. We need you to use your acting skills to lure this monster in. Just now, we have already inspected the largest beast-fighting Colosseum here. We can use it to deal with this monster. This incident involves the stability of the entire God's capital. If you can cooperate smoothly, the beast-fighting Colosseum will receive a direct gift from the Pharaoh. Also, when you pass the God's Chosen One assessment in the future, you can directly come under our command to be an official priest." "Yes, we will do it now." At this moment, a long-haired manager who was at the same level as Basha, Miga smiled. It was as if the goddess of luck had descended on him. He pulled 2 high-level battle beasts that he had personally cultivated with an iron chain and excitedly went out to lure the monster. It was a luring mission, not a direct battle with the monster. Such a simple mission could be exchanged for the favor of the high priest. In Manager Miga's opinion, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. However, when he arrived at the street where the monster was, he was stunned. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The sound of the heavy sword being dragged on the ground made him uneasy. In the blink of an eye, the high-level battle beast in his hand, which was 10 meters away from the monster, had turned into mud. It was as if it had gone through a routine process in a meat grinder. Haha! Someone actually took the initiative to come to our door. A little girl in a blue dress was sitting on the shoulder of Triangle Head and reached out to point at Manager Miga. Suddenly, good and evil, the word evil, appeared on Miga's shoulder. For a moment, a large number of iron wires drilled out from the word, penetrating every inch of his skin and every part of his organs. He was forcibly strangled into a steel wire ball. He was better off dead than alive. The other people in the Beast Fighting Coliseum all witnessed such a terrifying scene. In the eyes of the ordinary employees of the Beast Fighting Coliseum, Manager Miga, who was powerful, did not even have the ability to resist in front of such a monster. Seeing that the first luring failed, the high priest directly gave a compulsory order. The few of you, go and lure the monster in. Without waiting for an answer, Meat Coliseum threw out 4 people, including Manager Basha. They had accepted the high priest's compulsory order. As slaves, they had to carry it out. Otherwise, it would be a dead end. Since they were going to die anyway, they might as well fight. Maybe there was still, courage and faith were of no use in the face of absolute terror. In the blink of an eye, 3 people had died. Kacha, the sound of meat being cut. A black hardened arm was thrown into the air. Manager Basha sacrificed all the black water to strengthen his right arm. At the cost of crippling his right arm, he forcibly blocked Triangle Head's slash. However, in the next second, Triangle Head's other hand had lifted him into the air, ready to execute him alone. At the critical moment, Elisa, who was sitting on his shoulder, seemed to smell something. Wait, why do you have the smell of him on you? Him? For a moment, the thick fog that could not be seen through shrouded the two of them. Elisa and Manager Basha secretly communicated. About 2 minutes passed. Manager Basha kicked off Triangle Head's restraint and ran back to the Beast Fighting Coliseum as fast as he could. After the 6th demon, Elisa received some information about the Beast Fighting Coliseum. She was not afraid at all and let Triangle Head take the initiative to chase after him. Chapter 979. 20 hours ago, a doctor with a face full of fear was pushing a neat corpse cart through the streets, trying to seek shelter from the surrounding residents. However, at the critical juncture of the fog and monsters, the residents locked their doors, and no one was willing to accept the doctor. Just when the doctor felt tired from running for a long time and took a break, suddenly, a gust of wind blew. Not far from the roadside, the door of a restaurant with a signboard named Breaka's Stew opened, and a thick fog was constantly pouring out from the inside. The doctor's expression was quite ugly, and he didn't seem to want to go in. But it couldn't be helped. The streets were full of strange creatures, and this restaurant that suddenly opened its door was also the only refuge. The moment the doctor stepped into the restaurant, a strong meat aroma came from inside. On the ceiling of the stew shop, more than a dozen humanoid creatures hung with mechanical butcher hooks. Black body fluid flowed out from their wounds. They were all wearing the apprentice priest service issued by the pyramid. Most of them still had signs of life, but their movements were sealed and hung here. It seemed that they had to wait until the complete bleeding was done before they were taken to the kitchen. This group of apprentice priests stared at the doctor's accidental intrusion and immediately cast a pleading look, hoping that the doctor could save them. However, because the vocal system had been removed, they could only mumble and whine in a low voice. Such a scene scared the doctor and he stepped back again and again. However, the door of the restaurant behind him had long been locked. Ta-ta-ta, the continuous sound of chopping meat continued to come from the kitchen area, scaring the doctor and making him tremble. He didn't dare to save these priests at all. After all, they were hung from a high place. Not to mention whether they could be taken out of the hook. Once touched, the hook would inevitably make a sound. Once it attracted the guys in the kitchen, the doctor would also become one of the dried meat. Completely ignoring the apprentice priest's request, the doctor pushed the corpse to the back of the restaurant and tried to leave from the back door. However, after some observation, he found that the back door of the restaurant was located deep in the kitchen. The continuous sound of chopping meat also came from the kitchen. What to do? He could only gamble. The doctor gritted his teeth and quietly pushed the corpse into the kitchen. He used the stove and the vegetable rack to cover his body. Through the gap between the shelves, he could see a humanoid creature wearing a butcher's skirt and a triangular headgear. It was using a giant machete in its hand to chop meat on the chopping board. Every time the machete chopped down, liquid would splash out. It looked abnormally terrifying under the dim light. The doctor was so frightened that he lost his cool. He sped up and pushed the cart towards the back door not far away. Seeing that the back door was right in front of him, he ran out of the restaurant. Suddenly, from the inner side of the back door, a little loli in a blue dress flashed out and stared at the two people in front of her with completely blackened eyes. "I finally found you!" As the little loli's voice sounded in the kitchen, the sound of chopping meat stopped. Scary Triangle Head was already standing behind the doctor, the heavy knife in his hand raised high. Whoosh! The saber chopped down, the heavy knife happened to be in front of him, and it did not cut into the doctor's body. A few pieces of fragrant braised meat were placed on the surface of the blade. The surface of the meat was still emitting a fragrant aroma. It seemed to be fresh braised meat that had just been marinated. Aliza said with a smile, "I passed by this time. I happened to pass by this restaurant and discovered that the secret braised meat here is too delicious. It's a type of local pork, and there's a special fragrance in it that leaves an endless aftertaste in the mouth. Brother Nicholas, quickly try it." Pork. Han Dong picked up a piece and stuffed it into his mouth. Tasted really good. "Well, it's delicious. I thought you made the braised meat with special materials." Han Dong, who was disguised as a doctor, pointed at the trainee priest hanging in the restaurant's lobby. Aliza said with disgust, "The humans in this city have a kind of black blood flowing in their bodies. It stinks. It's disgusting." This group of fearless priests suddenly broke in when I was eating with Uncle Triangle and knocked over a large plate of braised meat. I was so angry. "Okay. Mr. Nicholas and Miss Jane, come with me. It's absolutely safe down there." The so-called back door did not lead to the outside world. Instead, it was a derivative passage formed by the descent of Silent Hill that led to a deeper silent space. Han Dong disguised himself as a doctor all the way and fled in panic. After entering the restaurant, he pretended to look for the back door to escape. In fact, he guessed that the pyramid had a way to see through the fog and observe the civilian area. For example, the Eye of Horus, that frequently appeared during the assessment. As the main body of Silent Hill, Aliza was very likely to have been marked by the pyramid. Before Han Dong came into contact with her, he had to put on a show. "Aliza, how many of the townspeople have successfully entered the civilian area?" "Everyone has come in. My fog can sense everyone's aura. We've all followed your instructions. Everyone is hiding in the dark, and we haven't made any big movements." "Good. Next, I need Aliza to do something for you. There's an area called the Colosseum in the civilian area. I need your cooperation to put on a show." "Okay." Aliza agreed without hesitation. She stayed in Dry Town all year round. Except for the occasional participants, she was usually very bored. Now that there were so many fun things to do, she was very willing to do them. Mr. Nicholas, your way of doing things is a little similar to Pennywise's. There's a hint of caution in the madness. Both of you are very interesting people. However, Uncle Triangle didn't let me go to Mr. Clown's circus before and tried to minimize my contact with clowns as much as possible. He said that Mr. Clown was quite dangerous. However, Uncle Triangle doesn't have such a dislike for you. Oh, haha! Han Dong smiled and quickly nodded to Triangle Head, who was standing beside Eliza. That was exactly why. That was why Eliza wandered around the Colosseum. Although he didn't expect that the pyramid would specifically target Eliza. But what surprised Han Dong was that 3 high priests had come to the Colosseum and tried to kill the origin of Silent Hill. Eliza, who was sitting on Triangle Head's shoulder, was immediately attacked by the internal staff as soon as she entered the Colosseum. But because the level difference was too big, they were basically instantly killed by Triangle Head. Under the orders of the High Priest. At the cost of sacrificing a large number of Colosseum staff, Eliza was successfully lured to the number 1 Colosseum. At the same time, there was a rush of knocking at the main door of the Colosseum. Still in a state of panic, the staff members who were cleaning up the bodies of their companions in the hall saw through the peephole on the door that a kind-looking doctor was pushing a body at the door. He seemed to be looking for a temporary shelter. Chapter 980. Colosseum Number 1. It was also the organization's largest Colosseum. It was usually used for large-scale Colosseum competitions, because of the High Priest's order. At the cost of 32 ordinary staff members, 18 high-level beasts, and 2 supervisors, they finally lured the source of Silent Hill, demon spirit, Elisa, here. Since the Colosseum was not invaded by Silent Hill, it was actually very dangerous for Elisa to move around in such an area. Just as Elisa was trying to lure Silent Hill into the Colosseum area, a white mist slowly spread out from under her body. A strong light enveloped the Colosseum area, dispersing all the mist released by Elisa. Silent Hill could not cover the current area. At this time, a man wearing gold jewelry and covered in light slowly descended from the sky. Light High Priest Menes stared at the little girl on Triangle Head's shoulder and frowned. Even under the light, the little girl was still a mass of dark resentment in Menes' eyes. He could not see the true nature of the little girl. There was no possibility of redemption at all. How did such an individual come into being? Just as Menes was curious about the little girl, the light dispelled the mist, and Silent Hill could not descend. Elisa was completely enraged. Uncle Triangle, kill him! At this time, a strong pressure suddenly descended from above. It came from Meat High Priest, Gut. Triangle Head was not afraid of the strong pressure at all. He raised his heavy sword and slashed at the meat on his head. However, the slash, which had always been able to cut and kill the target, failed this time. The blade completely sank into the fat layer of the meat. Although it caused some damage, it was still far from killing the meat. Boom! A cloud of dust came. The meat also felt the threat of the slash and stopped to a certain extent. Due to the rebound effect of the collision, the meat landed more than 10 meters away and stood beside Menes, who had just landed. A small crater similar to a meteorite was formed at the collision site. Triangle Head knelt on one knee. The right arm used to kill the meat was completely broken. However, waves of dark energy were constantly overflowing from Elisa's body and transmitted to the monster's body, helping the mud-like arm to quickly repair. At this moment, a black shadow flashed from the blind spot behind him. Execution Archpriest, Seth, whose head was shaped like a machete, approached the target from the dark. His goal was different from the other 2 high priests. Seth completely excluded the triangular-headed man from his field of vision. His eyes were fixed on the target that the pharaoh had named to be eliminated, the main body that was shrouded in white fog in the civilian area, Alicia. Dazzling Light and Meatball appeared one after another just to attract attention and suppress the more threatening triangular-headed monster. This would create a perfect opportunity for Seth to assassinate the main target in the dark. As long as they could kill the female officer, most of the troubles in the civilian district would be solved, and their mission would be completed. When the fog dissipated, it would also take away the monsters wandering in the fog. The pyramid's priest army could smoothly enter the civilian area and regain sovereignty. As the high priest of execution, his assassination skills were top-notch. Moreover, Seth's ability was also abnormal. His eyes could always find the target's fatal weakness. In his opinion, Triangle Head was very difficult to deal with, but this little girl's body was full of weaknesses. When Triangle Head noticed the assassin coming from behind, and the assassin's aura was no weaker than the other two high priests, an ability from the world of Silent Hill was released. Swinging the machete in the opposite direction, it was very likely that it would not be able to block the assassin. Triangle Head's arm was repaired, and she put the heavy machete on her neck, self-decapitation. The body that was separated from the head disappeared instantly, as if it was taken back to Silent Hill. When the triangular-headed man with a large piece of rotten flesh fell to the ground, it immediately formed a closed triangular metal chamber that shrouded Alicia in it, providing comprehensive protection. Huh! Although Seth had never seen such a strange ability, in her eyes, there was nothing she could not cut. As mentioned earlier, as the high priest of execution, Seth's head was shaped like a machete. In fact, the black machete at the top was not her head, but her assassination weapon. At the same time, the machete was removed. High Priest Seth's body was also revealed, a skinny, dark-skinned woman with a slender braid, exuding an extremely terrifying murderous aura. At the same time, she was also the person in charge of this operation, responsible for killing the source of the fog. Clang! The machete smoothly cut open the metal chamber. Through the gap, Seth could already see Alicia hiding inside. She was releasing white fog, trying to create a new triangular-headed man again. Obviously, the speed of creating the triangular-headed man was not as fast as Seth's cutting speed. If this went on, Alicia might be beheaded. At this time, a noise came from the Colosseum. "This place has been requisitioned by the High Priest. You can't go in. Even if you are a doctor from Imhotep, you can't go in." "The High Priest is here, that's great. I have something to ask them," a loud voice echoed in the Colosseum. The intrusion of an outsider interrupted Seth's execution to a certain extent. However, Seth did not respond at all and continued to cut open the metal chamber. At the same time, a louder voice that could be heard by the entire Colosseum was heard. "The high priests really have the demeanor of a ruler. They sacrificed 52 outstanding civilians who served the pyramid just to lure this young lady into the Colosseum. Aren't the lives of slaves counted? They can lure her in themselves, but they insist on sending innocent people to their deaths. What an interesting idea." These words were obviously not for the high priest, but for the staff present in the Colosseum to hear. Judging from the situation when the high priest fought against the monster, they knew the strength of the monster in advance. They did use the lives of the slaves in exchange for the success of the lure. This matter was nothing in itself. As the high priest, he did have the right to make the slaves do anything, even sacrifice them. However, it was a problem when someone said it in front of him, and the speaker was not an ordinary person. His words had a kind of infectious quality, which came from the clown virus. It made his words more persuasive and rooted in the hearts of others, making the staff who heard it very concerned about this matter. "Who is it?" Seth also realized that something was wrong. While continuing to cut, he glanced behind him with the corner of his eyes. Unexpectedly, a strange image entered his peripheral vision. On the underworld, a dog-headed Grim Reaper holding a black scythe stood. In the Grim Reaper's hand was a rather terrifying corpse. The terrifying resentment it emitted could almost cover the entire Colosseum. Seth, who realized the danger, decisively gave up on the opportunity in front of him. He used Flash Step and stood side by side with his two companions, staring at the entrance of the Colosseum. However, with the naked eye, one could only see a doctor with a nervous expression pushing an exquisite-looking female corpse. Slaves are also people, and slaves are an indispensable part of the holy capital. Am I right? High Priest? Who are you? How dare you talk about humanity and justice in front of me, the High Priest of Glory? I, Menes, am both the spokesperson of the Sun Temple and the light of the holy capital. The slaves used their lives in exchange for peace in the holy capital. It is their glory. Deceiver! Under the glory, give up your original form. Menes was completely enraged when he heard Han Dong's reactionary word. A ray of light that could burn all evil and darkness shot out from Menes' chest, completely enveloping Han Dong and the female corpse. Unexpectedly, Han Dong still looked the same as before. There was no change. The female corpse on the cart seemed to be unhappy. A stream of blood flowed out from her nostrils. Ping. The glass shattered. The sun wheel mirror that constantly covered Menes' body to block external attacks shattered. Menes seemed to have suffered an undetectable impact. His body twisted in a spiral and slammed into the wall at the side of the arena. Streams of black water with spots of light slowly flowed out from the cracks in the wall. Han Dong said with a look of disdain, "Being able to control light means being the emissary of the sun, the spokesperson of the Sun Temple? Then you have to excrete every day. Why aren't you the emissary of the toilet, the spokesperson of old age?" Chapter 981. Han Dong's mouth was unforgiving. However, the High Priestess was also quite powerful. The light released by Menes did not seem to have much effect on Han Dong. In fact, Han Dong was completely relying on the adaptability of the black vortex body to resist it head-on. However, he could still feel waves of burning in his soul. At the same time, he retracted his left arm behind his back. This kind of light had a certain restraining effect on death. Even if it was only for a moment, it still burned off a layer of skin on Han Dong's left arm. However, Miss Jane suddenly made her move. With his magic eye, Han Dong could vaguely see that when Miss Jane used some kind of primitive witchcraft, a hidden pattern directly appeared on the surface of the sun wheel mirror that Menes used to protect his body. When the sun wheel mirror was shattered, it also caused a spiral impact on Menes' body. It was quite terrifying. Compared to the past, Miss Jane had grown a lot. In terms of destructive power, Miss Jane could be ranked in the top 3 among the 10 demons of Dry Town. However, the powerful witchcraft used by Miss Jane would also cause a certain amount of backlash on her body. While Menes suffered a heavy blow, the other 2 high priestesses were stunned. Han Dong threw out a void tentacle with his right hand and used spatial teleportation to bring the 6th demon, Aletheia, back to his side. Aletheia also reconstructed a triangular head on her head. Compared to the previous triangular head, this one was smaller and more agile. The powerful heavy sword was also changed into 2 smaller butcher knives to adapt to the current battle. This way, the situation in the Colosseum became a 3v3 situation. Aletheia said cautiously, "Mr. Nicholas, you were right. There are also very powerful people in this city. However, the origin of their power seems to be the same. The same stinky black blood flows in their bodies. Yes, I'll tell you the origin of their power after the war. However, although the origin of their power is the same, due to the subsequent development, their powers are divided into different factions. These 3 are the High Priestesses second only to the Pharaoh. You have to be careful. Since Miss Jane has already attacked High Priest Brilliant Light, let us continue to deal with him. Can I kill it?" Miss Jane's unhappy voice sounded. Of course. Alessa was also very excited to meet such an interesting opponent. Hee hee, then I'll deal with that dark-skinned big sister. She almost killed me just now. I want to see what her nature is. Yes. When the assignment of personnel was completed, Han Dong showed a friendly smile and greeted Meat Boss Gu Te, who was opposite him. This high priest was the one responsible for testing Han Dong and the others' muscle strength during the routine test. Meat swung his fist. The momentum was so shocking that Han Dong immediately used his left and right hands to defend. A layer of black sand wall with the pattern of scarabs appeared in front of them. At the same time, his right arm grew rapidly. All kinds of fleshy threads were connected together to form a biological meat shield in front of him. However, Mr. Meat's fist first hit the surface of the sand wall. Then, something terrifying happened. His oval-shaped arm was full of fat. As his fist moved, layers of fat pulsed on the surface of his arm like rubber rings. Through this form, he kept accumulating strength in his fist. This scene was similar to the main character of a pirate anime, but Mr. Meat's arm was much fatter. It was completely dependent on the accumulated strength of his fat. Boom! The layer of fat kept surging forward and broke through the sand wall. It crashed into the meat shield formed by Han Dong's right arm. Boom! The temporary meat shield formed by his right arm exploded, and he flew straight to the edge of the field. Count! Following Han Dong's shout, a giant blood dog grew out of his broken right arm. It even extended 4 thick limbs and firmly stepped on the ground to prevent his body from retreating. Even so, he still slid 10 meters before coming to a complete stop. What a terrifying fat power! Mr. Meat's thinking is simple. He's just following the Pharaoh's orders. I have to control him and persuade him as much as possible. The High Priest is the core power of God's capital. I have to find ways to reduce the losses. Chapter 982. The pharaoh inside the pyramid had already observed the situation in the Colosseum through the eye of Horus. He was about to kill one of the enemy's generals and end the fog that shrouded the civilian area, but he was stopped by an intruder. All of this was obviously premeditated. However, since Han Dong, the leader, had appeared, the pharaoh also had some countermeasures. The world forces that Nicholas attracted have already infiltrated the civilian area under the cover of the fog and the interruption of the network. In the fog, this group of townspeople is not affected at all, and they even have the assistance of various fog monsters. Our forces will be limited by perception in all aspects, which is very disadvantageous for battle. Before the source of the fog is cleared, it is not good to send out troops. However, since Nicholas has appeared, we can try to end this war in advance. Shu you go. Try to see if you can directly kill the enemy leader. Even if you are discovered or get into trouble, with your ability, you should be able to escape unscathed. The pharaoh's will could be transmitted to any area of Luoyang. These words were directly transmitted to the Temple of Wind. It was heard by a handsome man with floating blue hair and a perfect body. There were a large number of light blue clouds on the surface of his body. A material from the pharaoh's treasury, an exclusive divine weapon, Bluebird, made by Osiris Heavy Industries, was in the hands of this man. As a gust of wind blew through the temple, there was no one on the throne of the god of wind. The unique wind was quickly approaching the southern entrance of the civilian area, which was also the entrance closest to the Colosseum. Observed with the naked eye, there was only a slight difference in color. This gust of wind had a hint of light blue. Just as this gust of wind was about to enter the civilian area Duong, unexpectedly, the light blue gust of wind crashed heavily into a colorful wall that was both real and illusory, and was isolated from the civilian area. A colorful ripple spread out from the point of impact, as if a layer of enchantment that the eye of Horus could not pry into had been set up. The strange thing was, this layer of illusory colored enchantment seemed to be screening, and it would not work on ordinary people. Even the priests could enter and exit normally. It would only block special existences with divinity. As Han Dong had been to the Forbidden Zone, he established a friendly relationship with the White Giant. He knew very well that God's capital had deliberately preserved the existence of the White Giant Temple through the method of captivity. They had actively sent slaves into the temple to steal the White Giant's technology. Since the White Giant could create the god of alien, Han Dong estimated that there must be a divine creation in the pyramid. In order to prevent the first phase of the war, the uprising in the civilian district, from being disturbed by unknown forces, the existence closest to God and Ridley was assigned to guard the outer area and conduct a screening defense. One of the 9 pillar gods, Wind God Shu, revealed his true form because he was blocked. The power of the hurricane condensed around his body, intending to cut open the colorful barrier in front of him. At this moment, an old man with a head full of white hair and a face full of wrinkles wearing a white coat suddenly appeared at the lower end of the road. I thought that Nicholas was joking. I didn't expect that there really is a god in this living city. Interesting, I need to understand your body. The man with light blue hair fluttering in the air looked at the old man below with an unpleasant expression. Because the old man's body exuded a strange and powerful divinity. This divinity was completely different from the god's level that Shu knew. However, as one of the 9 pillar gods, he was originally blessed by God's capital. The wind here would listen to his call, and he was completely unafraid of the enemy in front of him. Bluebird, a long spear inlaid with a bluebird sculpture at the bottom. As he raised his hand, the hurricane gathered on the long spear under the blessing of the divinity, and suddenly stabbed at the old man below. The blue bird flashed, and the white coat and the old man's body were torn apart together. However, the tip of the spear, which was the center of the hurricane, was blocked by a strange field. It was President Richard's fingertips that blocked the tip of the spear. The disguised body of the old man was equivalent to President Richard's coat. As the coat was torn apart by the hurricane, President Richard's true void body was directly exposed. The body that used to be in the dark swamp of deep space was now dyed with the color of stars. Strands of illusory colors moved between the tentacles, and the lower body was wearing a priest's dress that symbolized the void god cult. Super body, President Richard stretched out his finger and formed a kind of void field, blocking the god of winds stab head-on. However, there was still a little that was not blocked. A drop of blood shining with starlight dripped to the ground. Wow! It's so powerful! It can actually hurt me. President Richard looked excited. The light blue-haired man, Shu, stared at the blocked attack with a shocked expression. When he looked up at the old man again, he had the illusion that he was looking at the deep space of the universe. In the depths of the distant galaxy, there was a mass of matter that looked like an assembly of eyes floating. When he came back to his senses, the void imprint had already appeared on Shu's chest. Even a god could not resist this kind of void imprint. Shu, come back. The enemy in front of you is very dangerous. The pharaoh's voice interrupted the god of wind's thoughts of attacking. He immediately turned into a light blue wind and turned back to the pyramid at the fastest speed. The pharaoh would personally remove the strange void imprint for him. Under the gaze of the Eye of Horus, President Richard was still covered by a layer of color. If one looked carefully, one could only see the void tentacles between the colors. It even made the pharaoh's eyes uncomfortable. There's such a person in the town? He actually has such a high level of divinity, and he obtained the power of divinity through himself. President Richard's appearance made the pharaoh dispel his decision to continue sending divine creations. Before the fog dissipated, he would not casually send in troops. I hope the 3 high priests can give me a better answer. Even if we can't deal with Nicholas, we have to eliminate the source of the fog. At this time, President Richard, who was standing at the end of the street, removed the color and took the initiative to look at the Eye of Horus. He waved at the pharaoh on the other side. Then, a void gate opened behind the president, and a large number of tentacles stretched out from inside. President Richard waved goodbye as he was dragged into the gate. Today, President Richard was worthy of the title of number 1 below the mayor. This ranking even included the clown Han Dong. In the Colosseum, the sound of flesh bombarding flesh could be heard one after another. Even the sixth demon, Elisa, couldn't stand it anymore. She was worried about Han Dong's physical condition. Will Mr. Nicholas die? Should I go and help him? Why should I do this? With Mr. Nicholas' strength, he should have the upper hand. Elisa was still summoning various monsters to cooperate with the Triangle Head to fight the tireless Seth, executioner, head-on. Boom! Han Dong suffered a head-on collision from the meat. Black sand scattered in all directions, and several of his ribs were broken. His whole body slammed straight into the wall at the side of the field. Count also felt uncomfortable. Several bloodhounds had already died. He hurriedly shouted, "Hey! What are you playing at? If this goes on, you won't be able to hold on." Count was also very nervous and even a little angry. This was because Han Dong was completely one-sided and had no intention of fighting back. Including the collision just now, this was already the 16th time he had been attacked head-on by the meat. "Count, you just need to repair my body so that I can hold on. This is what I have to do if I want to ascend to the position of Pharaoh." Han Dong propped up his battered body and walked towards the meat boss again. When he was 5 meters away, Han Dong said calmly, "Boss Meat, can we talk now?" As soon as he finished speaking, he swung his fist downward and directly blasted Han Dong to the ground, forming a pit more than a meter deep. Unfortunately, Han Dong's skull was abnormally strong and firmly blocked this punch. Even though he was pressed down by the fist piled up with fat and blood kept spitting out of his mouth, Han Dong still asked, "Boss Meat, can we talk now?" Unexpectedly, the meat followed up with another heavy stomp. And just as this stomp was about to land, at the edge of the Colosseum, the brilliant high priest, whose body was covered by a white cloth, suddenly let out a painful howl. His body began to shrink inwards. Brilliant cracks spread all over his body, and his face twisted in pain. "No. Impossible. How can I die here? I'm God's capital." Before he could finish his words, accompanied by a strong explosion of brilliant, his body completely exploded. The brilliant high priest died. Corresponding, Miss Jane, who was also covered by a white cloth, had one of her slender arms separated from her body. It fell to the ground and turned into fine powder that scattered with the wind. There were also many severe burn marks on the surface of her body. Boss Meat stared at the dead meanies and grabbed Han Dong from the ground. The shape of a mouth slowly appeared on his fat face. He spoke for the first time, "Meanies is dead. You can say whatever you want to say now." Chapter 983. Long before Han Dong participated in the God's Choice test, he had learned about the situation of the other high priests from Terra. In the pyramid, there were many high priests who refused to accept the pharaoh or were neutral. After all, the God's capital's constitution was like this. The corresponding positions were for the people with the corresponding abilities. At first, more than 90% of the high priests wanted to replace the pharaoh. However, all the high priests who tried to challenge him failed without exception. This went on for a long time. When everyone realized how powerful the current pharaoh was, the number of people who had such thoughts dropped from 90% to 20%. Among these 20% members, this Boss Meat was included. Boss Meat was fat all over his body. The proportion of his brain was also much higher than that of an ordinary person. The reason why he did not talk to Han Dong and only beat him up was because Boss Meat saw the situation and was not biased towards Han Dong. Or rather, the current Han Dong was not worth it and not enough to change his position. Until he noticed 3 points. 1. The battle in the Colosseum had been going on for half an hour. Logically speaking, The eye of Horus should be able to see the situation here, but the pyramid's reinforcements had not arrived. This meant that Han Dong must have secretly set up a method to prevent the battle from being affected by external factors. 2. Han Dong's attitude was quite sincere, at least much better than the current pharaoh. 3. And the most important point. The current pharaoh's experienced bootlicker, dazzling Menes, who was also powerful, was dead. As a high priest, Boss Meat knew Menes' special ability very well. Due to the photonization effect, Menes could be said to be one of the best life-saving abilities among all the high priests. However, Han Dong's subordinates could kill Menes on the spot. With the above 3 points added together, Boss Meat changed his position. Menes is dead. You can say whatever you want. Han Dong slowly climbed up from the pit, reached out to one of his nostrils, and exhaled. A stream of blood, along with the crushed cartilage, flew out from his nostrils. This feeling made Han Dong feel much better. Then, he slowly said, I just want to ask the 2 of you to join my camp. My uprising will start from the civilian area. I also hope that the 2 of you can use this Colosseum as the center to raise the flag of overthrowing slavery and win over the people for me. Both of you other than Boss Meat, there was also Executioner Seth, who was fighting against him. Hearing this, Seth immediately took a quick step to the side to put some distance between himself and Triangle Head. He stared at Boss Meat with a serious expression. Gute, are you going to betray us? However, General Meat answered his companion's question calmly. It's not a rebellion, but a revolution. However, I'm not completely sure yet. As he spoke, General Meat once again changed the topic to Han Dong. We will once again fully assist you in your promotion. When the time comes, what can you give us? Hearing this, Han Dong gestured for him to wait. At this time, a colorful substance descended from the top of the Colosseum and quickly entered Han Dong's brain. A series of colors flashed in Han Dong's eyes, and in this way, image-level information was transmitted. Just now, a friend of mine stopped a special existence outside the city. He is different from your high priest, but his strength is not weaker than yours. May I ask, General Meat, does the pharaoh have an army with a divinity? General Meat was shocked. Did the 9 pillar gods attack just now? 9 pillar gods. Han Dong frowned and continued. No. There was only a man with flowing blue hair, who could control the winds of Shen Du. He tried to sneak into the civilian area from the south. He probably wanted to interfere with our battle here. Coincidentally, he was blocked by my friend. As expected, Shen Du has already created a god? It's not a true god, it's just, as he said this, the other high priest at the side looked at him. This was a secret of the highest level. If it was revealed, even the high priest would be stripped of his identity. If it was revealed, it meant that General Meat had chosen to betray. Just what? It's just a relationship between a divinity and a vessel. Han Dong reacted quickly and immediately said, Divinity and vessel. Using the Egyptian gods that Shen Du believes in as a template to create a divinity of the corresponding attributes, and then take it to a priest of the matching attributes to try to fuse it? General Meat nodded. That's about it. The actual operation is quite complicated, and it requires a lot of materials. The gods chosen one assessment is carried out with different gods. On one hand, it is to assess the potential of the slaves, and on the other hand, it is to select special talent. If the slave who accepted the test showed an extremely high compatibility with a certain god, then the slave who accepted the test showed an extremely high compatibility with the god. After passing the assessment, he will become a candidate and have the opportunity to become a vessel to fuse with the divinity. If he can really become a new god, the pharaoh will also give special permission to build a temple and a corresponding company for this new god in the first ring area. After all, at the beginning of the birth of a new god, a large amount of power of faith and energy materials are needed to ensure stability. Han Dong could not help but laugh when he heard this. Ah! A god that kneels under the pharaoh. How ironic! By the way, the divinity obtained through the creation of the divinity and the accommodation of the body should not be as powerful as becoming a god by oneself, right? Yes, some aspects will be restricted and limited. In my eyes, this cannot be called a true god, it is just a false god. Even so, we are quite eager. When we obtain divinity, we will also undergo a real transformation. Yes, as long as the attributes match, once divinity is obtained, the individual related abilities will undergo a qualitative change. Let's do it this way. If you can help me take over Shindu, these divinities will be given to you. The two of you have pledged allegiance to me from the beginning, so you naturally have priority. General Meat looked surprised and immediately responded. Now, the main divinities are embedded in the bodies of the 9 pillar gods. If you want to obtain the divinity, in addition to defeating them, you also need to strip them without destroying the divinity. The strength of the 9 pillar gods is quite terrifying. I suggest that you focus on killing them. When General Meat said this, Han Dong showed an evil smile. Such an expression even made the fat all over General Meat's body tremble. No. The ultimate purpose of starting the Node War is to obtain an undamaged Shindu. This is also why, no matter how you hit me, I will not fight back. Because in my eyes, General Meat, you are an important part of Shindu. The 9 pillar gods are like the 9 pillars supporting Shindu, they must not be harmed. The unharmed here refers to the divinity. As for their bodies, it doesn't matter what you do to them. Don't worry, didn't you say? This method of becoming a god is a false god? On my side, there is a true god in a sense. True god. Speaking of this, President Richard, who was temporarily acting as a security guard at the southern entrance, suddenly sneezed. There was a kind of illusory substance in the sneeze, and it happened to spray on a passing trainee priest, causing him to instantly degenerate, exploding and scattering into lumps of star-colored flesh. Chapter 984. Since Meat had already revealed the secret of the God Creator, it was time for him to take a side. Meat's decision also led the execution high priest beside him. The two had a good relationship in private, and it could even be said that they were close. However, compared to Terra and Meat, this execution high priest did not have much of a reaction and was completely neutral. Now, Meanies was dead, and Meat chose to be betrayed, leaving only one option for Seth. Please rest here for a while to recover the stamina you used during the battle. Later, I will explain the uprising plan in the civilian area to you. As for the pharaoh, he lost 3 high priests and the 9-pillar god, wind goddess ambush failed. With the internet completely cut off and Silent Hill descending, the pharaoh will most likely give up on the civilian area. We don't need to be in a hurry. Rest for an hour or two. Okay. Since they had already chosen a side, there was nothing more to say. Han Dong was able to take over the civilian area and perfectly deal with the ambush of the 3 high priests. This was enough to show that he had the qualifications to be a leader. Meat and Seth did not think too much about it and went to the high-class room of the Warbeast organization to rest. Han Dong immediately went to Jane's side to check on her injuries. It had to be said that Dazzling Meanies was a high priest with a strong foundation. The ability he had could suppress evil to a certain extent. If he faced Han Dong, Jane, or Elisa head-on, he would have the upper hand. It was all because he had underestimated his opponent at the beginning that he took Miss Jane's attack head-on and was branded with the mark of the Secret Kingdom. Later, he was able to successfully drag Meanies into a subconsciousness space. Otherwise, it would be quite troublesome to face him head-on. At least, there would be no way to determine the winner in a short time. Looking at Miss Jane's broken arm and the severe burn marks all over her body, Han Dong's heart ached. When he connected his consciousness, Miss Jane's voice sounded. It's okay. The destruction of my right arm is mainly because I used a lot of destructive witchcraft. Otherwise, it would be difficult to kill this high priest in a short time. As for the burns on my body, I just need some time to recover. Since Elisa is here, let her guard me. Nicholas, hurry up and go about your business. When the war is over, you can accompany me if you have time. Okay. I'll pick you up later. Indeed, Han Dong still had things to do. Although this battle was quite successful, and he had even managed to pull the two high priests to his side, at the same time, he had also uncovered a major problem. The pharaoh's strongest army, other than the high priests, also had an army of fake gods. The war was just a good start. If they wanted to obtain the final victory, they had to take every step steadily. In the beginning, I used the high priest's abuse of the slaves' lives to lure the monsters into the trap to awaken their rebellious hearts. Due to the use of a small amount of the cackling virus, it has affected all the staff in the Colosseum. Once the meat recovers, I'll organize a meeting. It's better not to use the virus as much as possible. I have to use the most ordinary way to completely evoke the rebellious hearts of the slaves. Han Dong could play a little trick in words, especially some of the judgmental words that could deeply affect others and even plant seeds deep in their hearts. The key to this was the cackling maniac, because of the fusion of Pennywise's clown virus. So the cackling maniac also had a similar infection characteristic. In the aspect of spiritual invasion, it was even better when paired with the faceless skull. In principle, Han Dong could use the cover of the fog and a large loudspeaker to let his laughter be heard by everyone in the civilian area. Then, he could spread the cackling maniac to all the civilians and easily win the support of all the civilians. However, Han Dong directly erased this idea. He wasn't Pennywise. What he wanted was a fairy's capital that hadn't changed at all. Han Dong wanted the people of Shun-Du to recognize him as the pharaoh from the bottom of their hearts. He did not want to use the cackling maniac's influence to create a cackling maniac dynasty that enslaved people's mind. The more he used external influence, the more false the final result. Sooner or later, the lie would be exposed, and Han Dong would be overthrown by a more dominant and influential participant. Because he took more than 10 heavy punches from Boss Meat, Han Dong himself also needed to rest for a while. While the Black Vortex body was being beaten, it had already warned Han Dong many times. Ouch! Boss Meat didn't know how to act either. Every punch was real. If it wasn't for Miss Jane quickly taking care of meanies, my body might have broken through the limit and directly exploded. Fortunately, the ending was perfect. Ouch, it hurts. As soon as Han Dong walked out of the Colosseum and left everyone's sight, he immediately changed to a difficult posture of walking while leaning against the wall. After all, Han Dong was not the type to take a beating. This kind of thing should be left to Togu. Walking in the long passage of the Colosseum, there were only 10 meters left before he returned to the main hall. Asterisk drip 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 drip. Asterisk the crisp sound of water dripping could be heard from the lounge on the side, and the metal door of the corresponding lounge opened a small gap. Han Dong immediately spread out his senses, and after confirming that there was no one in the passage, he quickly stepped into the lounge. Asterisk click, asterisk the door was locked. Looking at the lounge, the first thing that caught his eye was a pair of long legs resting on a bench. Crystal clear water droplets continuously flowed out from the slightly fleshy white thighs and dripped onto the ground. Meritus used the time while waiting for Han Dong to do some stretching exercises in a tight-fitting white shirt. Oh, that female corpse is really powerful. She could actually kill a high priestess in just a few minutes. Han Dong smiled foolishly and quickly changed the topic. Miss Mary, did you find the target? Of course I did. These dark dwellers are quite interesting. From their tone, they were planning to take advantage of the chaos in the god's capital to make some money. Who knew that I would find them? However, these guys are quite arrogant. They are not willing to take the risk to participate in the war. Even if they want to help, they want to split the loot 50-50. I'll let you go and talk to them. Okay, Miss Mary, quickly bring me there. This was the second task that Han Dong gave Meritus. After sending the clerk and Elisa to the civilian district, they immediately searched for traces of the 5th Squad. If they had already left, then forget it. If they were still in the god's capital. If he could rope in this group of hybrid demons who worshipped the same king as Lord Perugia, he would be able to add another powerful force to his forces. Moreover, from the performance of this fate event, these dark dwellers had superior concealment abilities. They could help Han Dong do some secret things. As Han Dong was devoured by Meritus, he was transferred and breathed in and out. Han Dong was covered in saliva when he landed in a secret room. When Han Dong appeared, the so-called dark dwellers in front of him were all shocked. Their unwillingness to cooperate disappeared, and they immediately knelt on the ground. Your Majesty. Chapter 985. As early as when Han Dong was looking at the memory of the promotion competition, Meritus identified the identity of the 5th Squad. They belonged to the hybrid demons formed by the associated darkness, the Dark Dwellers, and they believed in the old king, Chaos Walker. According to Meritus, the Chaos Walker they believed in was the gray existence that stopped time when Han Dong attacked Perugia City and met with Han Dong alone. In addition, Han Dong was also suspicious. Since these dark dwellers were born in the darkness, they may also be related to the ultimate goal of the Holy City expedition. As mentioned before, the old king's tablet deciphered by the secret Whisper Knights recorded a dark existence. Contacting such a hybrid demon squad was of great significance, second only to the Node War. Therefore, Han Dong asked Meritus to find the traces of the 5th Squad. Once found, Han Dong wanted to have a good talk with these guys. Since they were hybrid demons that could go to the destiny space, they must have a certain human attribute, so it would be easier to negotiate with them than those purebred hybrid demons. In the civilian area, in a gloomy room that was invaded by darkness, the dark dwellers who temporarily lived here, all mature hybrid demons, were waiting to negotiate with Han Dong. They wanted to get as much benefits as possible to get close to the Gate of Truth. They were all covered in black cloaks, and the surface of their skin exuded a black light. Their shadows and bodies would have asymmetrical tentacles. The 4 members were gathered in the hall. Some were lying on the wall like a lizard, revealing a black light tail. Some were half of their bodies merged into the darkness, and only the upper body was exposed to the ceiling. There were also 2 who were playing an advanced version of the flower rope game using thin threads woven by the darkness. Han Dong had already drafted the script for negotiation. He came here by teleportation and was about to negotiate with this group of mature hybrid demons comparable to Count. When this group of dark dwellers observed Han Dong's appearance, they were suddenly stunned. This image seemed to be a perfect match with a certain supreme existence in their memory. A sense of reverence from the depths of their hearts filled their bodies. They knelt in front of Han Dong in the most respectful posture of the dark race. The head was completely buried in the darkness, and the spine on the back was raised high in an arc. Their voices echoed in the building through the darkness. Your Majesty, Han Dong, who was preparing to negotiate with the hybrid demons according to the script, was stunned. Although it might be related to the gray, old king, it shouldn't have turned into such an exaggerated situation. Meritus, who was standing beside him, was also shocked when she saw this scene. Then, she fell into deep thought. When she first saw Han Dong, she felt very strange. She did not understand why Han Dong was emitting gray matter similar to the Chaos Walker, but was also recognized by the other 2 former kings. In the subsequent contact, Meritus also became interested in the opposite sex for the first time. In the entire Toad City, she couldn't find a male as interesting as Han Dong. Furthermore, Meritus was certain that Han Dong was a unique existence. He could not be classified as a hybrid demon, nor could he be classified as a human. Just as Han Dong was a little stunned and didn't know how to deal with the current situation. One of the dark race residents slowly raised his head and stared at Han Dong for a long time with a face full of doubts. No. Our Majesty stands at the highest point of the universe, but he can't interfere with the destiny space. You are not the king. But the structure of your brain is almost the same, and at the same time, you emit the gray matter that only the king and his direct descendants can release. Are you the incarnation of the king? Or the chaos kin? Hearing the question of the dark race residents, Han Dong recalled the conversation with the gray matter king in Perugia City. I don't know which master copied the head. It looks flawed, but it's actually so perfect. From the above conversation, Han Dong could be sure of one thing. The dark race residents should have never seen the true appearance of the gray matter king. Firstly, it was because the old king with a high position rarely appeared. Secondly, this group of people treated Han Dong as the king. If they had seen the real king, they would definitely be able to tell the difference. They should have used other methods to understand the king's appearance and feel the king's aura. For example, the stone slab, the virtual image of the dream, or the description of the king from a certain atavistic body or a mythical body. My image and aura were exactly the same as the king they knew indirectly, which was why they were mistaken. Most likely that was the case. After all, even Lord Perugia, who had an atavistic body, was unable to see the old king before his death. In that case, is my head really a copy of the gray matter king? No wonder my tentacles are also gray, but there are some blemishes on the surface of the tentacles. But according to the old king's evaluation, these blemishes are another kind of perfection. I don't know what kind of master could replicate such a perfect head using the old king as a template and even be praised by the person involved. There's still a long way to go. Thinking of this, Han Dong secretly smiled. In this way, the originally difficult negotiation became simple. With the information in his hands, Han Dong began to show his traditional skills and began to bluff to his heart's content. How did I come? Where did I come from? Actually, even I don't know. The only memory I have is of an abyss prison full of chaos. Since I was born, I have traveled the European continent. Recently, I just passed by Perugia, and I really didn't like the rats there. Later, I met Lord Meritus in the wetlands. Coincidentally, I accepted the invitation of the Bufo, and Lord Meritus and I participated in this fateful event together. After it was done, the Bufo promised to give me the opportunity to observe the wall. The Bufo's invitation? The opportunity to observe the wall? For these mature mantis demons, this was an opportunity that they could only dream of. If they could peek into the toad wall, even if it was a wall left by a mythical body, it would allow them to get closer and even reach out to touch the door of truth. Han Dong found the opportunity and began to ask about the origin of this group of dark inhabitants. Which teleportation gate did you come in from? Did you come here voluntarily? Or were you entrusted by the Lord to come here? Sir, we are the dark inhabitants living in the city of London. We were entrusted by Mother N.G. to come here through the door of darkness in the city of London. We tried to obtain precious materials that don't exist in the real world from the destiny space, especially materials related to darkness. It can help us reach the atavism stage faster, and it can also improve our status in the city of London. When he heard this, Han Dong was shocked. The city of London, wasn't this the final destination of the Holy City expedition? The mother mentioned by these guys was likely to be the ultimate goal of the expeditionary force, the lower old king related to darkness. However, what made Han Dong quite puzzled was, why did this group of dark inhabitants believe in the two old kings? Or because the lower old king and the upper old king were not at the same level. The darkness in the city of London, including the lower Old King, who ruled the city-state, were all under the control of the grey Old King. Han Dong was shocked in his heart, but he was extraordinarily calm on the surface. He planned to ask Meritus privately. Continue to talk about your experience in God's capital. Han Dong smiled and gestured for this group of dark inhabitants to continue. The destiny space repels us, and we also know that it is extremely dangerous here. Therefore, we deliberately hide in the darkness to avoid conflict. At first, we just wanted to leave quickly after clearing the level. Who knew that a war would suddenly break out, so we wanted to take the opportunity to get something before leaving. Since the war was caused by you, sir, we are willing to provide assistance. We only hope that you can keep us safe. Han Dong smiled with satisfaction. Well, don't worry, I will ensure your safety. As long as you do well, I will even give you some darkness-related treasures in God's capital. Or you can bring a meeting gift for the manager of the City of London, your mother. Also, I am also very interested in the City of London. After I complete the Buffos commission, I will try to visit the City of London next. Looking forward to your visit, my mother will be very happy. Chapter 986. Although Han Dong used the 4 dark residents as tools in his heart, he didn't want them to die. Because the dark residents were stealthy and the team's execution was strong, Han Dong ordered them to sneak into the pyramid to do something less dangerous when the war advanced to the 9 Pillars Company. After all, the information about the City of London was too important. Han Dong would wait until the war was over and then ask them about the City of London in the name of giving rewards. This building shrouded in darkness is very good. I will tell my subordinates not to interfere with your rest. You just wait here for my operation notice. Yes, sir. Since they had identified Han Dong's identity, the dark residents no longer disguised themselves. They took off their hoods and revealed their faces. The fiends who stepped into the destiny realm must also be mixed with human attributes. These 4 dark residents all had faces similar to humans. Strangely, they were all women. Their skin emitted a black light, and only their eyes were white. Their appearance was similar to the dark elves in some magical works. Their ears were quite strange. Their earlobes were tentacle-shaped, and they held a small ball of flesh that emitted a dark light, which seemed to belong to their energy storage. Goodbye, sir. 4 girls who looked like dark elves surrounded each other and waved goodbye to Han Dong. Their bodies were shining with dark light. Although they looked like this, if they really fought, each of them had the strength close to count. Moreover, they could use a body fusion, which was very difficult to deal with. I thought the dark residents were a group of deformed life forms that were seriously aging due to being in the dark for a long time. Their skin was loose, and their whole body was flowing with black liquid. I didn't expect them to be such cute little black sisters. However, this is also related to their human genes. Because this matter was settled in advance, Han Dong was not in a hurry to return to the Colosseum. He intended to let the High Priest and Miss Jane rest for a while. He chose to walk back with Meritus and talk about the fiends. Without waiting for Han Dong to ask, her soft and moist body took the initiative to stick to him. After the Dark Dwellers mistook Han Dong as the king, Meritus' interest in Han Dong reached a deeper level. From the very beginning, I suspected that you were related to the Chaos Walker. I've made up my mind. If you're going to London, I'll go with you. I hope that after you obtain the position of a pharaoh, you can find something of sufficient value to give to the Bufo. That way, it will be more convenient for me to follow you. Sure. With such a rechargeable, atavistic body joining in, Han Dong was naturally very happy. By the way, Overlord Meritus, I mainly lived and grew up in the Holy City as a human, so I don't really understand the rules and hierarchy of the hybrid demon world. Just now, he had heard the meaning of those dark creatures. Their main belief was the old king related to grey matter, but at the same time, they lived in London, which was ruled by their mother. According to the Night Order's information, this biological mother should be a lower king who controlled the darkness. How could the hybrid demons believe in two old kings at the same time? Haha, as expected, you don't know anything. Although they all belong to the category of old kings. But the three levels of upper, middle, and lower are just for the convenience of understanding king and the definition given. The difference is still very big. Perhaps there are some people among you humans who understand, but you just don't say it. After all, once it is said, it may cause panic among all humans. Even if humans are given 500 years of development, they may not be able to touch the upper-level existence. Since Han Dong saw a king in Perugia, he also realized this point. He even doubted the meaning of the Great Expedition to a certain extent. Meritus continued, the upper-level existence is something we can't imagine or touch. Who said that the king's subordinates can't become kings? As long as you reach a specific standard, you can write your name on the surface of a certain door. Han Dong was shocked. You mean the lower king who manages London is also a believer of the Chaos Walker? Well, to be precise, she should be a former believer. However, when she completed the coronation, she was completely out of control and formed her own faction. The establishment of Dark London is her independent performance when she became a king. However, she still maintains contact with the Chaos Walker, and even as a branch, she maintains the customs of worship in the past. Rumor has it that this old king of London has some eccentricities, so be careful. Becoming a king, it's still too far away for me, and the difficulty of becoming a king is much higher than touching the mythical level. Let's take it slow. Listening to such a huge leap of words, Han Dong might have been shocked in the past. But after seeing the grey old king, and seeing the full picture of a Black Tower world, Han Dong just smiled. There was nothing to be surprised about. The bigger the world, the more he couldn't see the boundary. The more fascinated Han Dong was. The current node of Prometheus was an important step for him to explore the truth of the world. Miss Mary, do you want to see a wider world with me? Haha, that depends on whether you have the ability to take me away from the Bufo. A node war 10th hour with the beast fighting organization in the southern part of the civilian area as the center, an uprising with the purpose of overthrowing slavery and establishing a new dynasty, was set off. The leaders were two famous high priests. Most of the slaves who were oppressed by the slavery system immediately responded to the call. Moreover, Han Dong had asked the two high priests to publicly announce that the pharaoh had completely given up on the civilian district. In the previous few attempts to retake the civilian district, the pharaoh had used the civilians as bait many times. The slaves were only treated as tools and not as lives. At the same time, as an invader, Han Dong beautified himself as the leader of the uprising. He used his experience of climbing step by step in the beast-fighting Colosseum as a low-level slave and gave an uprising speech in many densely populated areas in the civilian area. He didn't add the slightest influence of crazy laughter. He relied on his personal experience to arouse the dissatisfaction and disgust of the slavery system deep in the hearts of the civilians. However, there was the most important point. The townspeople who had been placed in the dark corners of the civilian area in advance, had already started a purge plan early on. All the people in power in the civilian area who were closely related to the pyramid were secretly eliminated to prevent them from causing trouble during the uprising process. Of course, the people in power who also had the idea of an uprising would naturally be kept. Just like that. The first fire of the uprising was ignited in the beast-fighting Colosseum. Because of the limitations of the slavery system, and through the efforts of the high priests and Han Dong, the fire finally spread throughout the civilian area. In this way, The forces under Han Dong's command were further expanded and had already fulfilled one of the requirements for victory in the Node War. They had completely surrounded the pharaoh's forces. The Node War had reached the most important and also the most tragic stage. As long as Han Dong gave the order, the army would enter the first ring and have a direct confrontation with the Nine Pillars Corporation. Chapter 987. Just as Han Dong was establishing his image as the leader of the uprising in the civilian area, Pharaoh Ed Louis was naturally not idle. Although he had abandoned the civilian area and placed the main battlefield in the first ring and the pyramid area, there were other movements in private. The death of a high priest, the betrayal of 2 high priests, and the failure of the Wind God's invasion shook Ed's self-confidence, and a little anxiety grew in his heart. At present, the priest in charge of information collection was reporting the situation. According to the information sent back by the dead trainee priest and the person in charge of the relevant organizations in the civilian area, there are a large number of residents from that strange town in the civilian area. Each of them has terrifying and strange abilities. In addition, from the transmission report of the wormhole, it can be roughly seen that most of the residents have left the town. We can try to go around and capture their town. Maybe we can cut off the energy source of these strange townspeople, or find their identity information in the town, or even related weakness information. Ed nodded. Once the town is attacked, the townspeople in the civilian area will inevitably quickly return to defend. At the same time, we also need to consider the space transfer of the atavistic body. I will conduct a lightning raid. Before the raid, I will send people to block the space around the town. The lightning raid is limited to 5 minutes. Once the time is up, no matter the progress, we will immediately withdraw. I still want to place the main battlefield in the pyramid. After all, if they want to win the Node War, they must explore the pyramid and defeat me. There is no need to focus on the outside. Lightning raid? Who do you want to send? Is the biological skeleton ready? It has been prepared according to your instructions. Pharaoh, you want to go in person? Although the skeleton is only connected to your consciousness, it is still risky. If you can't get rid of your consciousness before death, it will cause serious damage to your body's consciousness. The biological skeleton is made with me as a template. According to the default values, it can exert about 80% of its strength. Since it is a Node War of the same level, I don't think anything can kill me instantly. Pharaoh, which high priest do you want to bring with you for the lightning raid? I will inform them now. No, let the high priest stay in the pyramid and prepare for battle. I will bring 10 embryo priests to explore the situation in the town. As long as I can find the town's data interface, I will be able to grasp all the information and weaknesses of the townspeople. Lord Pharaoh, please be careful. Even the Eye of Horus could not spy on this small town. To be able to compress a world to the size of a small town, the node holder must be a special person. It's precisely because of this that I don't want to use my core combat power. Even if something were to happen to me in the town, I would only lose a biological body and 10 embryonic priests that can be reconstructed. About 10 minutes passed. The information priest in front of him received the information and immediately reported, "Pharaoh, the biological skeleton and the embryo priest have been sent through the underground secret passage to a safe area 200 meters away from the town. The basic debugging has been completed. You can access it at any time." Yes. Ed, who came from a Turing modeling, was proficient in information transmission. The biological neural network in Fairy's capital had been established before Ed became a pharaoh. But in Ed's view, the neural network set up in Fairy's capital was a mess. After he became a pharaoh, he spent several years to rebuild the network in Fairy's capital. Immediately, a black metal line was derived from the back of his head and connected to the independent network of the pyramid. In the blink of an eye, Ed Lewis had appeared on the cement road 200 meters away from Reedtown. The biological skeleton looked like a biological exoskeleton armor. Since Ed himself was the template, it could exert the same ability. At the same time, an underground transportation facility beside Ed transported a total of 10 large eggs and 10 sturdy, strictly selected slaves. The eggs sensed the presence of the host and immediately hatched a white, sleek facehugger that pounced on the face of the slaves. Alien technology, in addition to the God-making technology, it was a rapid cultivation method. In a short period of time, the bodies of the slaves split open from the middle, and a humanoid white-skinned life crawled out. What was born was not an alien, but a humanoid life form. On the surface of their bodies, there was a fine, human body line diagram drawn, like a carefully designed individual. Each of them had the ability of an official priest. The most important point was that these small embryonic priests could be used as the pharaoh's personal nourishment. There was a metal interface in the back of the neck for Ed to connect with a data line to achieve energy replenishment, ultra-fast regeneration, and other characteristics. In this way, Ed went to Reedtown with the idea of not losing a single soldier, trying to get detailed information about the townspeople in advance. Due to the departure of Demon Spirit Elisa, the Silent Hill effect in Reedtown was completely lifted and no longer shrouded in white fog. But there was still one thing that was strange. There was an artificial sun made by the Sun Temple in Fairy's capital. Currently, the sun was shining directly on Fairy's capital. However, Reedtown was pitch black, and no light could penetrate it. Some kind of lightless enchantment. Or is it that the town itself is an independent world with its own world system inside, so it will not be affected by the outside environment? The pharaoh, who was using the biological skeleton to move, was not worried about anything and led the embryonic priests into the town. The street lights seemed to be a little unstable and kept flashing. With just one step, it felt like they had completely left Fairy's capital and arrived in another world. Palm Street. The street was empty, and all the strange auras had disappeared. Thousands of metal lines protruded from the pharaoh's back. They were equipped with high-definition cameras and carried out a detailed search of the buildings on both sides of the street. On the one hand, they were looking for townspeople who had not left. On the other hand, they were looking for any network connection so that they could quickly obtain relevant information. Sure enough, all the townspeople have joined the war? Maybe the relevant information has been destroyed. At this moment, the flashing street lights suddenly went out. Due to the lightless field isolating everything, even if Ed wanted to simulate the surrounding situation through data simulation, all he got was darkness. Self-made light sources, including biological illuminators, flashlights, and primitive torches, were all useless. The light could not spread out and was rejected by the lightless field. Just as Ed felt uneasy and was about to leave the town temporarily, sizzle, the street lights lit up again. The embryonic priests who had been beside him were gone. At the same time, in front of Ed's eyes, under the street lights 10 times away, he could vaguely see a thin and tall faceless man in a suit. What is it? Ed was about to activate the high-definition camera to enhance his vision and carefully observe this man. The street lights went out again. About 5 seconds later, when the street lights lit up again, the thin and tall figure moved forward again and stood under the 9th Street light. Ed smelled a danger that he had never felt before and immediately turned to run, trying to leave the town. The street lights went out again. Even though Ed had changed his direction and ran a distance behind him, when the street lights lit up again, the lanky figure was still under the 8th Street light. That was right in front of him. This slow approach was like a countdown, and when the time was up, Ed's death would be announced. Ed did not dare to take the risk. After all, the most important thing was the war that was about to break out in the first ring. He decisively gave up the plan to invade the town. However, abnormal data fluctuations have been detected. The consciousness connection cannot be cut off. What? This is my own consciousness, and it is also the connection line that I set up myself. How can the lack of light here affect the transmission of data at the level of data? What the hell is this? As the street lights flickered, the thin and tall figure was constantly approaching. It was only a distance away from the street light. Ed gritted his teeth and directly detonated the built-in bioenergy battery of the biological skeleton. In the form of a light source, it completely self-destructed. The instantaneous explosion of ultra-high-intensity photon radiation dispersed the lightless field to a certain extent. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ed successfully transmitted his consciousness back to the main body. Ed's main body, who was sitting in the Pyramid Divine Eye room, had a trace of fear in his eyes. His whole body was steaming, and he was gasping for breath. No one is allowed to approach the town. Focus on the war that is about to break out. Ridley Town Mayor's Office. The mayor held a well-preserved skull in his hands and found an empty space in the storage cabinet to put it down. He also marked it with the words Prometheus as a souvenir. Chapter 988. In the civilian area in a biological building with a heart structure. This was originally the control center of the civilian area and the pyramid, leveled heart. Now, this place was designated as a temporary base for operations by Han Dong. At the bottom of the leveled heart, under the strengthening effect of a silent hill, a real heart room was derived. The wall surface was even slightly beating, and blood was constantly seeping out of the wall cavity. Such a heart conference room could completely cut off the spying of the Eye of Horus. At present, under Han Dong's call, all the important figures involved in this battle were present. 1. Meet and execution 2 high priests. 2. Except for the mayor, the 10 demons of Ridley, including Togu, the original 8th demon, and residents with special strength who could reach the level of quasi-10 demons. 3. Holy City, Toad, Team and Dragon City Team. On the eve of the meeting, Elisa suddenly sensed something. A group of people just tried to invade Ridley. What's the situation? With the mayor inside, anyone who goes in will only end up dead. Due to the characteristics of Ridley, the mayor is almost impossible to defeat inside, unless there is a high-level intervention. As a shareholder, Han Dong was naturally aware of this. It was precisely because of this that Han Dong felt at ease to put all the townspeople in Ridley, and even gave the mother to the mayor for safekeeping. It seemed that the mayor did not contribute, but in fact, the mayor's role in the war was irreplaceable. Due to the mayor's existence, Han Dong did not have to worry about the town being invaded and the mother's problem at all. After that, when Han Dong sat in the pharaoh's position, he would definitely take out some things related to the source of the world, in the world of Prometheus, to return the mayor's favor. After a short interlude, Han Dong returned his vision to the front. Other than the 10 demons at the conference table, there were 3 other people who had reached the level of quasi-10 demons. 2 of them were Nightmare Freddy and Leatherface Thomas, both from the demonic club. The reason why the 2 of them were allowed to join as an exception was because the 2 of them, along with Miles and Jason, were the famous 4 demonic humans of Ridley Town. At that time, Han Dong would specially arrange for the 4 of them to lead the humanoid demon club to launch a brutal attack on one of the shrines. No one knew which shrine would be chosen. Other than that, there was also a special member who joined the team, a new townsfolk who had just been promoted to Dry Town not long ago. If one didn't look carefully, it would be easy to miss this person. There was an old man sitting in the corner. He was thin and slightly hunched, wearing a white singlet and cloth shorts. Many parts of his skin and flesh had fallen off, to the extent that the white bones inside could be seen. He gave off the aura of a resurrected person. At first glance, one would think that he was an ordinary undead. Due to the loss of his chin, His vocal system was affected, and he could only make a single sound. General store owner, Mr. Aha, ranked number 11 in Ridley Town. Han Dong had used the Small World Ghost Stories node to exchange for shares in Ridley Town. As someone who had already touched the ceiling in the Ghost Stories world, Mr. Aha was naturally chosen by the mayor and successfully passed the test to become one of the townsfolk. Now, Mr. Aha had passed an extremely difficult qualification test and obtained the title deed to Ridley Town's Central Street. He had opened his own general store. Han Dong also liked Mr. Aha's specialty. He had specially called him to participate in this meeting. In the upcoming battle, Mr. Aha would be the special support for individual units, providing resources from the general store for each team. After all, Mr. Aha was a walking general store. Aha! Aha! Seeing Han Dong greet him, Mr. Aha also responded enthusiastically. In a way, it was Han Dong who helped him realize his wish of promotion. Jumping from a small world to a medium world was not necessarily a good thing. Ridley Town could be said to be one of the best promotion options for a creature of destiny in a small world. Next, I will arrange for you to be the leaders of the 9 siege teams in the meeting. You will face the 9 Pillar Gods Company, which is guarded by a god. If you have any objections, directly raise them after the allocation. The Sun God Temple will be invaded by the Dragon City team that is most familiar with this temple. I will also provide you with the remaining forces of the White Giant and the God of Abnormality. The Temple of the Earth God will be in charge of the transportation and road construction of Shindu. It even includes the overall planning of the underground area of Shindu. The internal factory is also responsible for the maintenance of the sandworms in Shindu. Director Sam will lead the members of the farm and the neighborhood committee to invade by harvesting souls to minimize the damage to the temple. The Temple of the Sky is equivalent to an astronomy company. It is responsible for the comprehensive monitoring of the planet where Shindu is located and collecting information from the surrounding galaxies. Director Richard will lead the hospital's forces to invade this temple. God Temple of the Netherworld King. This God Temple is under the command of Togo Gonzalez and the members of the Mystic sect to attack and occupy it. Since the Netherworld here has already been destroyed by me, the mission to attack and occupy it is much easier. If Togo completes the mission in advance, find the connection between master and servant and come directly to the pyramid to find me. The Temple of Chaos will be in charge of the war in Shindu. It is also the arsenal of Shindu. It will be fully suppressed and occupied by the demonic club. A fierce battle is inevitable. There is no need to worry about the damage to the temple and the surrounding area. We just need to minimize the loss of personnel as much as possible. The Temple of the Wind will be in charge of the Temple of the Wind. The Wind God in this temple has already fought with Director Richard once. Demps and the others will be in charge. The Temple of the Rain will be in charge of all the work related to water. It also includes the economic regulation of the Blackwater currency and the division and control of the original Blackwater in cooperation with the pyramid. Alessa will lead the residents related to water to occupy this place and minimize the damage as much as possible. The Temple of Breeding will be in charge of the company's research institute. It is in charge of the cultivation, breeding, and creation of Blackwater. The clerk, Miss Ferna, will be in charge. You should be very interested in this aspect. The Temple of Nature will be attacked by the 2 high priests and the militia of the civilian area. This is the arrangement of the war against the 9 temples. At the same time, the number 8 Crooked Neck, Charlie Ambrina, who runs an antique shop, and the number 11 grocery store owner, Mr. Aha, will be in charge of the dynamic supply of war materials. Finally, I have a very important request. When dealing with the false gods in the temple, suppress them as much as possible and extract the divinity from their bodies. If everyone can do it, when I sit on the throne of the pharaoh, I will allow you to choose the corresponding precious rewards in the pyramid's treasury. As for me, I will enter the pyramid in advance when you and the 9 pillar gods start a full-scale war. Chapter 989. The real key to this war was not the 9 Pillars Company. It was the pyramid that ruled God's capital. If they only attacked the 9 Pillars Company, the pyramid located in the center could provide them with an endless supply of energy. At the same time, the Eye of Horus could also pass through the fog of war and report the information of the invaders to the 9 Pillars Company in real time, making the attack extremely difficult. No matter how powerful Ridley was, it was difficult to win by simply attacking, and they would have to pay a huge price. A team of people must go inside the pyramid and create large-scale civil strife, so that the pyramid would not have time to care about the war between the 9 Pillars Company and could not even provide any assistance. The task of invading the pyramid naturally fell on Han Dong, who had once served as an apprentice priest in the pyramid. At the same time, Lord Meritus and Miss Jane, who were mobile power sources, would accompany Han Dong throughout the invasion. At the end of the meeting, General Meat requested a private conversation with Han Dong. The Black Pyramid is the crystallization of the wisdom of the wise white giant and the pinnacle of human wisdom. It can be regarded as an independent life, and every time the pharaoh ascends, he will optimize and transform the Black Pyramid to a certain extent. And the one with the deepest transformation is the current pharaoh. Speaking of this, Han Dong recalled the exaggerated scene of the pharaoh's descent, when he rescued the mother in the Black Pillar prison. Ed Lewis's back was connected to hundreds of millions of cables, and each cable could find a corresponding node inside the pyramid. To what extent can he do it? The fat piled on General Meat's face made a bitter face. As far as I know, the pyramid and the pharaoh are one. The structure of the pyramid will change, according to the pharaoh's consciousness. In addition to the high priest's private area, the pharaoh can also monitor the situation in any corner of the pyramid. The stone used to build the pyramid originated from the obsidian produced by the white giant. It has its own magnetic field and the characteristics of the material itself. Your friend's space ability can't be used normally. You once served as an apprentice priest under Terra, so you should know very well how strong the energy isolation of the pyramid is. Han Dong replied with a smile. Well, it is because I have lived in the pyramid as a trainee priest for a period of time that I chose to do this. According to my observation, the pyramid is not absolutely perfect. Although it was almost one with the current pharaoh, there was still a way to break it. If I am unable to break through the pyramid from the inside, it will be very difficult for you to obtain victory against the 9 pillar gods. Boss Meat nodded. Sneaking into the pyramid alone is indeed better than entering in a group, but the difficulty is still beyond our imagination. If you can really disrupt the pyramid system from the inside, so that the pyramid is unable to provide reinforcements and assistance to the 9 Pillars Company, I, Meatman, am willing to follow you for the rest of my life. I will never have any thoughts of rebellion. Node War. Hour 18. The mist in the civilian area dissipated, or rather, all of it returned to the body of the demon spirit, Elisa. Different exits of the civilian district, Second Ring Road. Teams with different styles rushed towards their respective target areas. Except for the Dragon City team that attacked the Temple of Sun and the army led by the 2 high priests that attacked the Temple of Nature, the scale of the army was relatively large. The rest of the teams were small and medium-sized, all less than 100 people. The Vanguard team was about to enter the first ring area and set foot on the territory of the 9 Pillars Company. Buzz. A beam of light shot out from the top of the pyramid and went straight to the sky. At the same time, the central temple of the 9 Pillars Company also shot out a corresponding beam of light and connected with it, forming a powerful, brilliant barrier that completely enveloped the first ring area. When the Vanguard team tried to cross the barrier, they were immediately burned by a kind of soul. A resident with the nature of an evil spirit had an arm directly burned off, and it could not be healed. This kind of brilliant light enchantment could restrain the evil spirits, ghosts, and monsters from Riedra town to a certain extent. The army had to slow down their attack and temporarily stop outside the barrier. Dean Richard, Gusu, Demps, the clerk, and other existences who had enough knowledge of barriers immediately deciphered this layer of brilliant barrier emitted by the pyramid. Ed Lewis, who was sitting in the room of the Divine Eye, sneered. It seemed that he had been freed from the dark fear of Ridley Town. It was also because Ridley Town had been invaded by the darkness that he had chosen to use half of the pyramid's energy to power the brilliant barrier. According to Ed Lewis's development plan for Shindu, when Shindu had grown to a certain level, this sandworm city would break out of its shell and abandon its original planet. At that time, the brilliant barrier would envelop the entire Shindu, which was also the sandworm, and begin its journey into the universe. It's impossible to close the brilliant barrier from the outside. If you want to attack, you have to endure the burning of the brilliant light. You evil monsters from the world of darkness, under this kind of brilliant light, it should be very uncomfortable. The brilliant light of Shindu will crush all darkness, and if that's not enough, I will personally crush you. There was a certain amount of anger in Ed Lewis's heart. It was not because Han Dong had kidnapped the mother, nor was it because of the planar war. It was because he had been humiliated by someone in Ridley Town. Activate war mode and let these invaders see the strength of Shindu. Aida gave the order. The ground of the entire first ring area trembled, the intensity of which was equivalent to a magnitude 10 earthquake. The corresponding 9 temples began to shake violently and gradually separated from the ground and floated up on their own. It gradually stopped 100 meters above the ground. At the same time, 9 individuals exuding strong divinity slowly walked out of the temple gate and stood on the platform, looking down at the invaders outside the barrier. Their figures were one size larger than ordinary people, and they wore gold ornaments that matched their attribute. There were also clear tattoos on their skin. Sun God Ra, a white-haired old man with a sun crown on his head and a sun scepter in his hand, had a rather exaggerated sun imprint on his back. The brilliant light released by him was even stronger than that of High Priest Menes. Earth God Gab, a strong man with dark skin and rock-like muscles all over his body. A hammer that was about 10 meters long and far larger than his body landed behind him. The rock-like man crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked down at the invaders with disdain. Sky God Nut, a woman with stars all over her body and blue crystal blood vessels flowing all over her body, held a sky-blue water bottle in her hand. While observing the invaders below, she felt a certain heretical cosmic energy, which made her show a slightly annoyed expression. Underworld God Osiris, a special mummy with green decay as the physical manifestation of the body. Green was vitality and decay was death. Holding a crank, he carefully observed the invaders below as if he was looking for the culprit who destroyed the netherworld underworld. War God Seth, an Egyptian war god with a bald head and dark skin, was wearing golden armor and carrying an arsenal with him. Following him out of the temple were 100 brave and skillful desert warriors. Each of them possessed superb combat skills. They could easily jump down from the temple platform that was suspended 100 meters in the air and participate in this war. Wind God Shu, as described previously, a handsome blue-haired man stared at President Richard with unblinking eyes, full of fear. Rain God Tevnut, torrential rain shrouded the temple alone. A woman with a lioness tail bathed in the torrential rain, revealing a ferocious look. She held a living snake scepter in her hand, as if she could not wait to participate in this battle. Breeding God Lephis, she had a beautiful face and used her pink fleshy wings as a bed, lying on her side at the edge of the platform. Dense life force continued to spread out, so much so that the surrounding ground began to grow out fleshy plants that looked like babies. The god of nature, Isis, in front of the temple covered by dense vegetation, there was a green bud growing. A middle-aged woman was kneeling in it, begging for nature to become one with her and drive away this group of dirty invaders. The 9 pillar gods appeared. They were the strongest subordinates of the current pharaoh Ed Lewis, and they were also the leaders of the future expansion of the universe. Chapter 990. The greed of humans was limitless. The humans of ancient Egypt reached the peak of intelligence, and were discovered by the white giant who created them. He chose some of the elites and brought them back to planet Libra 233 to cultivate, trying to use humans to expand their culture. However, they quickly learned knowledge from the Creator. Through this method, the intelligent humans who rapidly developed society, civilization, and science were like a hungry python that had drilled out of its nest, unsatisfied. They were not satisfied with the white giant's strict control of the black water. They were not satisfied with the white giant's blockade of some core knowledge. They were not satisfied with the white giant's closed management of them. In the end, they planned a rebellion. They overthrew the Creator and seized sovereignty. At the same time, they gained dominance. In addition to greed, another root of inferiority, arrogance, began to grow. For some people in power, arrogance had surpassed greed. Humans imprisoned the only white giant, Mother, underground and maximized the exploitation of the black water. They deliberately kept a part of the white giant's remnants and further explored their technology through captivity. Humans knew very well that the white giant had a kind of god-making technology designed to the origin of species. The pharaoh, who stood at the top, accepted and rejected the culture passed down from ancient Egypt. The main reason for the rejection was that in mythology, the definition of God was supreme, and the pharaoh was just a spokesperson. Why should humans kneel before God? This was the idea of the first pharaoh of Shindu after the rapid development of technology, rapid insight into the knowledge of the universe, and overthrow the Creator. So he began to build the temple of the 9 pillar gods. He built the temple on the periphery of the pyramid to show that he stood above God, but this formalism was not enough to satisfy the pharaoh's arrogance. He wanted to follow the blueprint of the ancient Egyptian gods and build a divine army for him to command. After 7 generations of pharaoh, gods mold Egyptian gods as blueprint, God's source, the essence of divinity obtained through the white giant's technology through devout rituals, sacrifice of life, and the power of the world, and all the basic facilities were ready. But the process of injecting God's source failed repeatedly. That was until the arrival of a participant of fate, Ed Lewis, who took over the throne as the 8th pharaoh. Ed was also very interested in the God-making plan, and immediately focused all his attention on this grand project. By integrating the knowledge of the computer field into the God-making technology, and introducing the basic concept of the integrated circuit, he successfully injected the divine source into the mold and obtained a divinity that could steadily output divinity. At this point, Shindu, a Kamagan, entered a new era, and Ed became the only existence in history who could stand shoulder to shoulder with the first pharaoh. But because the godhood was extremely picky about its host, the rejection reaction could instantly annihilate a priest. For a time, there was no one in Luoyang who could bear such a godhead. Therefore, Ed Lewis used his royal power to change the laws and the basic operation of Luoyang. 1. Introduction of the policy on slavery in a stage-type world. 2. At the same time, replace traditional currency with standard black water and advocate that all humans use black water to transform themselves. 3. Set up different stages of assessment and the most important God's chosen assessment. Under such a system, individuals with strong adaptability to the black water stood out and obtained the title of High Priest. At the same time, and the most important point, In the gods' chosen assessment, individuals who showed a divinity match would be tried to accept the divinity. Ed's great change was very successful, and he became a pharaoh who stood above the gods in the true sense. The temple was suspended in the air. The 9 pillar gods stood in front of the platform, looking down at the invaders below. Together with the brilliant waterfall from the sky, this scene was filled with a strong sense of epic. The brilliant waterfall was not just a protective barrier. The first ring and the pyramid were bathed in this intense light, and if the invaders wanted to attack, they would have to endure the light. Such a spectacular scene even shook some of the civilian militia from the civilian district. However, the residents of Reed Town, who were scattered in different areas, did not have much of a change in expression. They just stood quietly in front of the brilliant waterfall, waiting for a certain order. Dean Richard collected a part of the brilliant essence through the void crystal in his hand and handed it to Charlie Amberner, the Crooked Neck, and Mr. Aha, the grocery store owner. About 10 minutes passed. Mr. Aha found a lot of strange raw materials from the depths of the grocery store and handed them to the 8th demon, the Crooked Neck. Han Dong was lucky that he did not encounter the Crooked Neck during the confrontation with Reed Town, or else he would have been in quite a troublesome or even fatal situation. The unique items held by the Crooked Neck were Evil Umbrella and Magic Top Hat, B+. The Evil Umbrella was quite special. When put away, it could be used as a piercing weapon. Once it pierced the target, it would have a distortion effect, causing a lot of damage to the target. When unfolded, it could be used as a defensive weapon. The distorted patterns on the surface of the umbrella could distort all magic attack. Mr. Aha provided the raw materials. Charlie released hundreds of antique shop workers through the magic top hat. They looked like gray goblins, and immediately made imitations of the evil umbrella on the spot. The final product would be blessed by the Crooked Neck himself, giving it the distortion characteristic. Just like that, the strange black umbrellas were distributed to the invaders. Except for the militia, the white giant, and the alien, they were not affected by the brilliant light. The 9-pillar gods, who chose to hide and defend, could not stop this process. Moreover, taking the initiative to leave the protection of the brilliant light barrier was not a wise choice. The 9-pillar gods and the pharaoh in the pyramid could only silently watch this group of simple townspeople hold up the black umbrellas in their hands one by one. The brilliant light waterfall sprinkled from the sky was like a sudden rainstorm to the townspeople. At the same time, they held up the black umbrellas in their hands and stepped into the area covered by the brilliant light waterfall. While holding the black umbrellas, a black substance slowly covered the entire body of the townspeople, equivalent to a fusion process. At that time, even if the black umbrellas were damaged, it could still ensure that the townspeople could move normally under the brilliant light. The blocking rate reached 90%. The moment they set foot in the 9-pillar gods company, war broke out. According to the pharaoh's arrangement, the company's own troops and defensive facilities would first stop the invaders. After the invaders' physical strength had been reduced to a certain extent, the 9-pillar gods would personally move and kill them. However, the god of war, Seth, among the 9-pillar gods, could not hold back and jumped down from a height of 100 meters with 100 desert warriors, directly colliding with the demonic army that had come to this land. Seth, with a golden greatsword in one hand and a black crystal axe in the other, was about to kill the enemy camp. Moonlight shone down. 3 big men holding large black umbrellas had already surrounded him. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.